IB Nation, welcome back to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. It is Notre Dame Recruiting Hour, which is usually on Fridays, but we had to do a little bit of wheeling and dealing this week, so the Monday mailbag will now be on Friday this week, and we're coming at you Notre Dame Recruiting Hour because, folks, we are in the heat of April, which means there's a whole lot of visits that are happening this past week. We're going to recap the visitors that visited South Bend, some for the first time. We'll also be previewing the players that will be visiting during this week and also on Saturday is a big recruiting weekend. There is a couple big 2025 players that are visiting Notre Dame, one for the first time that will be very, very important for Notre Dame potentially moving forward for the rest of the 2025 recruiting class. I am joined by Sean Davis. I'm Ryan Roberts, by the way. Sean Davis, who is the co-host of the Lucky Lefty podcast and a recruiting analyst here at irishbreakdown.com, and also joined by a man that you guys have seen many times on the show in the past. Got Brian Smith, who is FB Scout _ Florida, I believe is the Twitter. I think I got that correct. Man, I'm good. I am so good. Not even looking at the Twitter right now. You can follow his work. Covers the Miami Hurricanes, also covers Auburn recruiting. And he is, for people that don't know, Brian travels everywhere. He was just at the Elite 11 in Oxford, Mississippi this past weekend, which of course means he saw Mr. Deuce Knight, 2025 quarterback commit to the University of Notre Dame in person, along with some of the other top signal callers in the 2025 class. So we have to have him on to talk a little bit Deuce Knight. Brian, first and foremost, as always, my friend, thank you for joining the podcast today, man. It's always appreciated.
Absolutely. It's a lot of fun. Right now is the go button has been hit and the afterburners are on. It is recruiting full bore between now and mid-July.
Oh, man. Yes. Me and my wife just had a conversation. Sean, I don't know if you had a conversation with your wife about this, but this is the clearance section of the offseason. We're like, hey, babe, I know that we got a lot of stuff planned, a lot of birthdays, a lot of firsts and some travel and everything, but a lot of recruiting things that are coming up over the next couple months. So we need to be a little bit patient, Mr. Sean.
It's a little bit easier for you, bro, because I can just say, babe, it's 80 minutes away. You can just hop in the car with me. You, on the other hand, have a little bit more in tow that includes hopping on a plane. So it's a little bit more difficult task for you, but absolutely, man. But it's really this into May up into officials in June. And then the commitments usually for Notre Dame start rolling in like early June into July. So this is when it gets very exciting for us and Notre Dame fans. So this is the best part. And it starts with the practices leading into the blue and gold game on April 20th, man. Can't wait to get started.
Well, and I know you'll be there on April 20th, which will be another huge Notre Dame recruiting weekend. Of course, Notre Dame does a lot of the recruiting early. So we're sitting here with almost 20 commitments in the 2025 class compared to a lot of schools that are like 5 or 6 right now. Like it's not a huge list, obviously, because a lot of schools do their recruiting late. We know Notre Dame kind of goes ahead of the curve and just kind of holds on to them for dear life until National Signing Day. I had somebody ask if there was a mailbag today. There will not be a mailbag today, but we already had a super chat that was thrown at us. So if you have super chats, throw them in and we will be sure to get them. If you have a question for Brian Smith specifically, super chat now to make sure you get him before he leads off on the first segment here. So Brian, first and foremost, we'll get to Deuce in a second. How was Oxford, man, this past weekend, just in general? Weather nice? Like what were the vibes at the Elite 11 this past weekend?
The weather was perfect. It was slightly overcast, 70-ish, and not humid. It was basically like San Diego. That's basically what it was like. So I'm down with that at any time. And I will speak for both of you on that as well. Since you both live in cold weather states, I'm sure you're over the edge of winter going into spring. I'll speak for you on that as well. I know how that works because I used to live in South Bend, but it was great. The Elite 11 people, for those that don't know, that run at the camp itself, Stump and all those guys, they do a tremendous job. Everything's organized. Everything's set up the same way. I've been to a gazillion of them, but it's money. I'm standing 10 feet away from the players. In between breaks, I'm going up talking to Deuce and George McIntyre. It's like me, you, and Sean going out for a beer.
Nice.
But it's football. It don't get no better than that, brother.
No.
Love it, man. Love it. Sean, I felt like I went up to Connecticut for a couple days before the weekend. And while I'm gone, not only is it freezing, Brian, to your point, also there was an earthquake in New Jersey.
I know.
Like, that happens apparently. So, all right.
Yeah, I don't understand what's going on with that. That I heard it was pretty sizable too. So
The highest level of an earthquake, they haven't had one that high on the Richter scale. It's 4.8 since the 1700s. 1700s.
what?
Yes, it was nuts. And
What?
I'm complaining. Then my buddy that lives out in California now is like, dude, we have 4.8s like every second of the day. Like, what are you complaining about? I'm like, well, I don't have 4.8s every second of the day, so I can't complain. Okay, let's get to Deuce Knight though. He obviously punched a ticket to the Elite 11 finals with his performance down in Oxford. So talk us through early impression, or not early impressions, your overall impressions on Deuce at his performance this past weekend, and then we'll obviously go a little bit more in depth on it.
This is the most difficult prospect that I've ever tried to evaluate wholeheartedly. To put things in perspective, at the end, they get them all together and they talk, and then they say MVPs, invites, and all this. And he goes through testing. He didn't say who it was. He starts giving testing numbers, and immediately I said, oh, that's Deuce. He said like 42 something vertical jump. And like, I knew he could do that because I'd talked to him about it before. But like everything kind of like everybody just, you know what I mean? Like everybody, everybody knew he was like an athlete. But when they started seeing him, I talking to some of the other kids who do so on the side, I'm like, yeah, I don't know what that is kind of thing. He's so freaky deaky that you can't evaluate him like anybody else. Now, I always tell people, they say, well, who's the best kid you ever seen? I said, it ain't close. It's Randy Moss. I never saw him live, but his high school tape is hilarious because he was playing against a bunch of small white kids in West Virginia, for one, and two, he was better than anybody. Like he'd have played in the Miami Public League and dominated. So that was crazy, but he's that kind of athlete, not quite as fast, but like 42-inch vertical. Michael Jordan's was 45. You know what I mean? Like, and he doesn't even know what he's doing.
And Deuce, for some context, Sean, we've talked about this before. He's an all-state basketball player, so I'm not overly surprised. But the key thing is I don't know if you got a 40 number on him, Brian, but like usually guys that jump like that also run very fast. That usually translates very well.
I was looking down the gun barrel when he did it, and I videoed it. I don't know what he ran. I just know when he got about 20 yards in, I said, yeah, he's real fast. And I was just worried about getting the hell out of the way at the end. So he's 6'4.5" right now, just about 200 pounds, and he looks like a toothpick. He's going to weigh 230, and he's going to be fine. But more importantly, with the drills they do, and they do everything: movement, pocket, roll out, make a guy miss, dip up under, dip out. They put him through everything. He adjusted well, but here's the stat of the day, and it really isn't a statistic. It's a number. I said, do you have a quarterback trainer right now? And he looked at me, he says, Morris. He's the guy that runs QB Country down in Mobile. They do a great job. He's been to 3 sessions. He's at a high school that he has no idea, compared to some of these other kids who've been trained since like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, how to do something. Like they stopped him after one drill. He's going to have to go back through it and explain, like he had no idea, and all the other kids knew how to do it.
Right.
He's the rawest kid you're going to see it, and he got an invite. His ceiling isn't a ceiling. It's like the top of the Empire State Building. So his arm motion's inconsistent. I even told him, I said, hey, man, you're dropping your elbow. That's why you're floating some of these. But when he was on, like he would roll right, flip his hip and throw it, and hit money ball. He does things that nobody else could do. So it's really hard to grade him. But his velocity, like he's trying to slow it down, not to overshoot, because they had some decent receivers that are catching, but they weren't like power, when Jeremiah Smith wasn't out there. And they're throwing, and they couldn't even catch some of his passes. But when he was on, he was just incredible. So a little inconsistent, which I expected, but like after a redshirt year, and I know this is an unfair comparison, he could have the same kind of transformation the guy that played at Louisville, who's now with the Ravens has. So that's who I would compare him to. And I know it's not fair, but he's solid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
League MVP, no big deal, but it's just an incredible athlete, man.
And see, Ryan, that's scary for a lot of Notre Dame fans, right? Because they don't want to kind of fully embrace what Brian is talking about in this moment. And I'll just say this: I've talked to former Notre Dame players that have openly admitted we've never recruited anything like that at quarterback. Not that we've never had that.
The closest one is your podcast buddy or Tony Rice or Jarius Jack. They're all in that stratosphere.
Yeah, but like you said, Brian, they've admitted, no, he's different.
The height is different for one.
The size,
and he's going to weigh 230 and still not be pudgy. Like Jarius Jackson, 95 to 99 at Notre Dame was really good. He got a little pudgy. He had a strong arm. He could run, but he can't. Like Deuce can make dudes miss in short space at 6'4.5".
Man.
You know what I mean? Like if he'd have concentrated on basketball, he could have went and played at a big program in college hoops. He just liked football. So, but his basketball video is fun if you want some entertainment. Go look that up on YouTube. It's pretty dope. That's just the kind of kid they have to work with. And I know that you can't plan it out, but theoretically having Carr in the class before him works because Deuce needs a red shirt. There's no way to hell he should play next year beyond just like a few packages and they can play 4 games and still red shirt because he would be eaten alive. He has too many overthrows. He doesn't understand post-snap reads or any of that stuff hardly at all. And he's cool with it. He's a really calm demeanor kid. He'll be good with it. Gino is a good quarterback coach for him. He's not like a yeller in-your-face guy. And, I mean, I've been around Deuce several times. Really calm and easygoing guy. He's not going to relate to the old school kind of crazy coaching style. So Gino will fit, and he can take his progressions. If Carr's a 3-and-out guy, this could be like a dream for Notre Dame. Finally having back-to-back quarterback after quarter. Notre Dame always sucks at quarterback compared to the elite schools in big games. That's why they haven't been where they needed to be the last 15, 20 years. So since Clausen, they've had some moments, and they've had some guys that could do it short term, but either they turned pro, got injured, whatever. It's just never worked out consistently. They could really have a run here with Deuce being the back end of that. It could be really awesome.
Well, and I was going to say, Brian, just like add to that is that I think that, and we talked about this, obviously, Sean, when Deuce committed to Notre Dame, but a big reason for that was Gino Guidugli and was kind of his style, because I think that fits him. Because, Sean, you just mentioned it, man. Notre Dame has really never seen anything like a Deuce Knight before. They've never seen it. So there has to be something comfortable that makes you willing to come up to South Bend, Indiana. Because it's I mean, look, let's be honest. Deuce could go to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, if he wanted to. He could stay in Mississippi. He could have went to Tennessee before George McIntyre committed to the University of Tennessee. Like, he could have gone anywhere down south, and it would have been a lot more comfortable. But Gino, I think, is a big reason why he chose uncomfortable, right? Like, he chose something different, which I think matters. And I'm interested to see, because I mean, personally for me, Brian, I don't know if you agree with this, but I want my quarterbacks to feel uncomfortable at times, right? Because until they feel uncomfortable, you're not really sure if they can handle all the trials, tribulations, all the negative, right? Like, that's a big thing about quarterbacks is some guys just can't handle that. They can't handle the adversity. They can't handle the spotlight. I think Deuce can, just by me being able to talk to him several times as well at this point.
He did that during Elite 11. Yeah. Like, they would coach him up on something where he just flat out had never done it before. He would take the coaching and then he would go apply it. That's all you could really ask. Because, I mean, he's where a lot of 8th and 9th graders are in, like, training off the field at his high school. It's brand new. He's always just, I know this is an old expression that's overused, but they roll out the ball and he kicks everybody's ass. He's just better than everybody. Because if he misses the read and then he overthrows a pass on 2nd down, on 3rd down, he makes 3 guys miss and gets a 1st down. God gave him that. And that's it. So once he figures out those reads and he has more chemistry with receivers and builds his time at Notre Dame, especially with the way they're recruiting a receiver now, this is the kind of guy, and I know him, I'm biased, he can win a Heisman going away. He can be Jayden Daniels for a reason, and it's ironic considering who the OC is for the Irish now. It can be scary, but he has so many things to clean up, and it's, like I said, he's the most difficult kid. I'm not saying this because I'm a Notre Dame fan that I've ever tried to evaluate. And I've seen him live at a game. I've seen him at Under Armour, and I've seen him at Elite 11. It's just inconsistency. I don't know how he's going to move up and how quickly. It's really, really hard.
Brian, I've had the opportunity to talk to the young man, and the one thing that stands out to me is that he feels like he's very honest with you about what needs to be developed in his quarterback game, especially in the passing game. He's very honest about that, very coachable. But he's also very honest in saying, when I step on the field, I'm the best player on the field. And he feels that and knows that, like, right now. And I think we get to college, he's still going to have that feeling. He's still going to feel like, especially when it's his time to step on the field, like, no matter what's going on, like you just said, man, I missed the read. I'll find a way to get the first down. Like I'm better than everyone out here. I don't know if Notre Dame has even ever had that attitude at quarterback. Brian, I mean, I can't think of maybe Tony Rice had a little bit of that at times. Maybe going back to some of the older guys that won championships, but I can't think of a quarterback that even had that mentality that I'm the best player on the field every time I step on.
Maybe Clausen's junior year. By then, he was really, really good in 2009. It's too bad he played on a crappy team.
Mm-hmm.
Like if he'd have played on Notre Dame's 2020 team, at least would have been competitive against Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying Book's not a good quarterback, but there's no comparison. Against the elite teams, your quarterback needs to be a dude, especially teams that you're not going to out-recruit in the trenches. And Notre Dame is not out-recruiting Georgia and Alabama in the trenches. So this is another reason it's so important to understand that quarterback recruiting is a valuable asset for any school, but ask yourself the following. How many times is Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, Georgia, Florida State, those kind of schools going to lose to Notre Dame if Notre Dame has the worst quarterback? 1 in 5, 1 in 10?
Right.
Because they're going to have better players in the trenches because they can take anybody, no matter their SAT score, that they can take whoever. So Notre Dame has to win quarterback battles. And that's why the quarterback recruiting in general for the Irish, Deuce being the latest, is so valuable.
Brian, let me ask you something about Deuce's performance this past weekend. If I asked you, you only have one answer here. What was the most impressive thing you saw from Deuce Knight this past weekend at Elite 11?
I think it was his ability to pick up what we were talking about earlier. And I was curious about this. They ran a rollout for the kids that are right-handed, and they would move it over for Deuce. He would roll right and then throw left. The first one, and I got all these on video. They're up on my Twitter. He throws and he kind of lobs it. It's accurate, but in real life, safety's going to get to that ball. Second one, he put a little bit of zip on it. The third one was like, that's an NFL throw. He literally, in the span of 3 throws, went from to, oh, okay, this is what we're looking for. I was surprised at how quickly he picked it up because not only did he flip his hips, he did it quickly. He had a definitive delivery, and he let it go. And, I mean, it was right here. The kid's coming across the middle on the edge of the goal line. I'm like, look, that's why guys get paid. So he did that on a few different drills, and some things were better than others. But when it was just time to throw and he doesn't think, when he thinks, he's terrible. He'll throw one to the moon because he'll dip his elbow and he'll get underneath it and he'll let it sail. But when he just lets it rip and he felt comfortable, he kind of went through it and he learned, it was just awesome. And I was even talking to one of the kids I'll talk a little bit more about, Tramel Jones, who was the best overall quarterback there. He's committed to Florida State. And he's like, he can do things like that nobody can do, like athletic, the way he moves, the way his motion is, everything. Like he was just freaked out by how athletic Deuce was. And this kid has been committed to Florida State for a year. So that puts it in perspective as well.
So we talk about what he's able to do on the field, the things you saw that were very impressive with the young man. What do you think has been the key? Because this is amazing to me. And you tell me whether or not you feel the same way. We talked about this double R. I've never seen a school change the narrative around their quarterback room without winning big. Usually you win big and then you start to get the quarterback recruits. And he talked about it. Brian talked about it. You stack, even if you don't want to mention Kenny Minchie, right? If they're going to stack CJ Carr, Deuce Knight, and then the guys they're going after in 26,
somebody's going to hit.
Somebody has to hit. That's exactly what I was getting to. I feel like
I already know where you're going. You're right. 100%.
Somebody's going to hit. And the fact that they've been able to do this without winning big, as Marcus Freeman, what he's done with this quarterback room along with Gino Guidugli, and to be honest, we talked about this jokingly. The poster child for development at quarterback, which is what we have not seen in all of this, might end up being Steve Angeli. Like, that's the funny thing about it. The fact that he's gone from what we saw last spring to even being serviceable, if that's what you want to call him, that is, okay, we can do this, we can develop you, and we can go out and get the big guys, the big guns in recruiting. For them to be in this space with the quarterback room to where it was 2 years ago, when we were talking about
Oh,
Drew Pine
God.
and Tyler Buckner being in a quarterback battle.
I refuse to have a conversation about that. I have to leave if that's going to be the next topic of this conversation. But your point is valid, and I'm not against anything that Steve does because his arm strength went up tremendously. Notre Dame strength programs helped him.
Yeah.
But now those same teaching skills, assuming that CJ, who's advanced, like CJ's development is polar opposite of Deuce. They couldn't be two more different quarterbacks.
Right.
But if you take that same attitude that CJ has, who's a very positive kid, he's got an arm, he can make weird throws, make him look easy. If you take that same attitude and you put it with Deuce, nothing against CJ, the ceiling is still not the same. Can't run like him. He's not 6'4.5", and he sure as hell doesn't have the shake and bake that he does to evade the rush, escape the pocket, and just gut you with a money ball that everybody else is sacked. Those are the plays that a certain guy in Kansas City does, even though he's not quite as athletic as Deuce, that just kills teams, and the Chiefs win games they shouldn't. You have to be able to make plays that has zero to do with coaching to get over the top. Kirby even talked about it recently. He said coaching will lose to talent 9 out of 10 times. And he said, that's why I don't see my family that much and we recruit so much at Georgia. I'm glad somebody else besides me is finally saying that consistently. You can't say crap against Kirby because he's got these things on his fingers. They're called national championship rings. So it's recruiting, and Deuce can do things, and it wouldn't matter if my mother was the quarterback coach. Eventually, he's going to make a play. You can't do anything about it. And I think he has the right attitude, in case you guys are going to ask. Like, I know Sean's talked to him. This is the third time I'd seen him, been around him, and I've messaged with him and stuff. He's the positive kid that people want to be around. They're blown away the way he runs and the way he moves. Like Tramel Jones, the kid I told you, he's committed to Florida State. His teammate is one of the best players in the country, a national top 50 kid.
Yeah.
And he's not as talented as Deuce. And the kid we're talking about is a receiver, Jamie Finch, who Notre Dame and everybody else has offered. If that kid who I've seen just rip apart national ranked DBs is not as athletic, what do you think Deuce is going to do once he understands when to roll out, when to check audible, when to change protection? I mean, this is a long process. How do you not like the upside? Because again, the kid's personality and his perception, he understands who he is now. Like you said, Sean, this is who I am now, but I know when I'm out there, I'm going to make plays. If you add just a couple of those ingredients, and he's had a year under his belt to train, and he's 215, whatever, look, there is no doubt he could be the best player that comes out of this class. He can be a special player at the NFL level one day.
Yeah.
Has all the things around him. So now it's just a matter of patience for Deuce, because it is a long process. Quarterback is an everyday journey for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
It's not a fun one. And Stump, the guy that runs the elite, was talking about that. Hey, man, guys that are top of the draft suck. And then there's guys like Tom Brady went in the 6th round. They all agreed, all the kids, Deuce included. But that's where he's at. And everybody else is kind of staring at him like he's the enigma. He's the alien out on the field with a bunch of kids are getting quarterback offers from around the country. It was wild.
I don't know if you had an opportunity to hear Mike Denbrock this weekend when he spoke with the media, but he said something I felt like was key, that was not just about changing the offense, but changing the offensive culture at Notre Dame. And he was talking about explosiveness. And he basically said, as I paraphrase, it doesn't matter which one of the quarterbacks starts for us. We're going to be explosive. And I thought that was very important to hear from the offensive coordinator, because everyone wants to make it, of course, about the transfer quarterback that's coming in that gives us the best chance to be explosive and win. And here's your OC saying, look, I got some dudes. I feel like I have some dudes that can create an explosive offense. And I want to relate that to the guys you just mentioned in recruiting, because none of them are the same, Brian. CJ,
They're all different.
They're all different. And that just goes to the accountability and responsibility I feel like that the coaches are taking to say, we're going to go get the talent. They don't have to be cookie cutter. They don't all have to be the same way to make our jobs easier. We're just going to go get guys that we feel like are difference makers. And once we get them in here, we're going to take accountability and responsibility to coach them so that they can reach their full potential in their ceiling and help us eventually hoist a trophy at Notre Dame. And I absolutely love that. I love the diversity that we see in the type of quarterbacks they're recruiting, as well as the talent that they're recruiting.
It's it's kind of interesting because I don't know if there's another team that has recruited quite the way Notre Dame has, even just the last couple of years. I mean, Carr was an elite player, and he's mobile, but he's not a true dual threat quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. And I guess it's just they have confidence they can coach whatever. And the Brady Hart kid, who I know down in Cocoa Ford, is a lot like Deuce, that he'll take off and he'll burn you. He's not as athletic as Deuce, but he can take off and burn you. I think they're going to that a little bit. Maybe Denbrock wants that. But if you can coach that and keep that pocket stuff going, because like Jayden was pretty good in the pocket at LSU. He doesn't get enough credit for that. And I know he was throwing to dudes. Again, those guys were ridiculous. Brian Thomas ran 4.33 at the combine at over 200 pounds. That never goes out of style. Notre Dame needs a little of that in their culture too. You can call it whatever the hell you want. I call it really good. So you get some more explosive players in the portal again, and they finally got some of these high school kids coming up that are receivers that are good. Finally, like Notre Dame's receiver recruiting has been nothing except for safety has been more of an enigma, but they finally have the pieces now stacked. Now it's just got to see it. And Denbrock, he can relate to it because he's coached a long time. Notre Dame fans are stunted when it comes to the offense until otherwise proven. He can say whatever the hell he wants. They wouldn't believe him if he said they were going to average 25 points a game because there's been too many bad performances in big moments over the last 15 years. It's just true. So they got to show it on the field, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, I think the quarterback dynamic kind of moving more to a dual threat guy, a guy that can win off his structure a little bit. Like I think that's like so Brian, I'm thinking of it like this way. If you're Marcus Freeman, who played linebacker in college, briefly in the NFL, but obviously lost time due to injury. And then he's a really good defensive coordinator on the college level. What's the biggest headache to a defense? It's a mobile quarterback, a guy that can
100%.
kill man coverage. That's what Deuce brings, man. That is just that's a headache to work against. Absolute headache. So I think that's where the game's going a little bit, or maybe Notre Dame's ideology around the position. I don't know if Sean asked you this because I was having a little bit of technical difficulties. I blame it on the eclipse today. That's where my blame is going to go, even though that's probably not at all what's happening. But are there any quarterbacks that maybe you wanted to highlight from this past weekend as well that either impressed you or maybe just had a couple question marks? Either way.
The two in particular were Tramel Jones going to Florida State. I had questions about him. And then George McIntyre, who Notre Dame ardently recruited. And I haven't looked him up recently, but George is top 100 by everybody and probably top 50. A couple of notes. Tramel plays at Mandarin High School, same high school as Jamie French. He's got a really strong arm, but he's only about 6 foot and a half. Stout kid, but he throws a lot of level 1 balls. And he'll put it on the money. He's got really good technique. He's worked with 6 Points training in Jacksonville. Solid quarterback all the way around. But on Sunday, he was just on fire. I sent a message to one of my Florida State buddies. I'm like, dude, he's by far the best guy here today. He's just so consistent. But Tramel's been trained since like 7th grade at one of the best facilities in the world. They like New York Yankees pitchers go to this same guy that trains him on throwing mechanics. That kind of puts it in perspective. Like the Yankees have more money than God. So he's been trained and he was freaked out by him. But he threw the ball really well and even into the wind showed what he could do. When Deuce was, and they would go back to back, when Deuce was throwing, the difference was his throwing motion is not the same. Like Tramel's motion is just a machine. And that's why training is so important at quarterback. Like running backs, I know there's some traits and things like that you need to kind of pick up from a coach, but you pretty much who you are. Like running back, you're a dude or you're not. Like Jerome Bettis was going to figure it out. Eric Dickerson was going to figure it out. Quarterback's different. When he was consistent and they dialed him in on something and they explained it to him and he picked it up, the way the ball came out of his hand was sickening. But he also had some, I'm like, where the hell is that going? So Tramel Jones was the best guy there. I want to give him all the credit in the world. Great kid. I wish him all the best at Florida State. The enigma was George McIntyre. Kid that's, again, recruited by Notre Dame and I think he's 50 offers. He plays at one of the private schools in Nashville, committed to the Vols. When we started, George is 6'6", legit. He's definitively taller than Deuce. And there was no wind, and he was throwing money balls. Sent a message to my buddy, this is an NFL player. The wind picked up, and they started doing pocket rollouts, bootlegs, different things where he had to change his feet outside, or like the guards, anything between the guards, that dude's money. But he couldn't throw on the run because he doesn't throw a tight spiral, and he's, feet aren't set, and the wind was coming at him. He threw more ducks than any of the other guys. There were several other kids with like lower offers that were way better than him on Sunday. That's also a reminder that every day is different. Trammell was on fire on Sunday. There was a game this past season, he had like 4 turnovers in one game. He's still human. Deuce has had moments like that too. They're all that way. But George McIntyre underwhelmed, didn't get invited, and he was definitively the highest rated kid there by a mile. So it's really wild to see that. And it was a reminder to me that while I even told Trammell's dad before the contest, I'm like, McIntyre is going to get invited, barring him just laying an egg because he's going to Tennessee and he's highly rated. Well, he laid an egg.
Wow.
So, I mean, I got the film up. It don't lie. So one of my friends is probably going to marry a guy that's getting ready to go to Tennessee, and I sent her the video, and she couldn't wait to send it to all his friends. That's how bad some of the video was. Like, literally, she told me that.
Wow.
So you got to be careful about expectations for QBs. And to Sean's point earlier, I know this isn't what the parents of these kids want to hear. It's about getting kid after kid. You can't worry about who leaves. You can't worry if somebody fails. You go to the next guy. That's your only option anyway. If CJ Carr sucks for whatever reason, it's on to Deuce Knight. If Deuce Knight sucks, it's on to the next. That's it. You just get as many good players as you can. And Tennessee's trying to do that. And I like Georgia's high school film. But if I just went by Sunday, I'm like, there's no way in hell he can play in the SEC. He'll get annihilated. He just couldn't move outside the pocket. He could only do pocket throws. Well, in the SEC, they have these things called pass rushers. Good luck. You're not going to sit on your feet back there very much.
Yeah.
They will plant your ass is what they'll do. So it was amazing to me to see the kid that nobody thought was as good. All my buddies aren't big Trammell fans. He was electric. Deuce was all over, which I expected. And then George was the kid everybody expected to do well. Just didn't perform at a very high level at all. So that's quarterback play, man. It's wild. I followed that group the entire day. I watched nobody else but those 3.
Yeah.
So.
In your experience talking about quarterback play and the things you pointed out, the giftings of one Deuce Knight or a quarterback as gifted as he is, it's like a gift and a curse, right? Especially when you talk about consistency, accuracy. What do you foresee being the biggest obstacle? Will it be that arm slot that you talked about, or what a lot of quarterbacks struggle with is footwork? Like, which one of those things is going to be the thing that he's going to have to consistently be repetitive at in order for him to reach his full potential?
Everything that I've ever learned in sport begins at the feet and the ankles. And that throw, I think the example that I made earlier where he rolled to his right, which produces against the grain because he's a lefty. When he set his feet and he planted and he twirled and he went through his hips, NFL pass. When he didn't, if there had been a free safety on the play, he would have added to his stat line. That's it. When his feet ain't right, his elbow would be in a different slot. And when that happens, all hell, like he had some passes like curveballs and stuff. So he needs more consistent. And I'm sure Lefty, you should have Lefty break down his film, which I'm sure he's done in some capacity anyway. But I'd like to hear his take on some of the film that I put up, and there'll be plenty of it floating around because it's Deuce Knight. He's committed to Notre Dame. But like, what does he have to do beyond that? Like, it's one thing to say set your feet, but it's the rotation. It's how hard you turn your hips. It's how quickly you open your shoulder. I mean, this stuff is complex. Quarter inch is a half mile. So it starts with the feet, because if you don't do that right, all the other stuff's still going to suck. You can do all those right. If your feet aren't pointed the right direction and everything, I just from pitching and playing basketball and stuff as a kid, it's pretty similar. You got to have your feet right or the ball doesn't go where it needs to go. If he gets that, the only thing I'm worried about is the one for every quarterback, and that's, do you pick up the playbook? And I know this is like the FU of football training. Do you understand post-snap reads? Those are nasty words to college coaches because it takes too long and they get fired before the kids learn it. It's a long process, but if he can do that, he'll play 10 years in the NFL. So everything else, man, it's so natural for him to move. He's like a slinky.
Brian, this is a very informative conversation. I want, before you go, you can plug any place that people can find content, obviously your Twitter and everything. Like you said, you have obviously a lot of great videos that have been posted on Twitter recently.
At FB Scout _Florida. Right now, it's more about videos. Like I cover Auburn for Auburn Daily. I cover Miami for all Hurricanes. I've got a podcast on Florida State called Locked On Seminoles. I'm a little everywhere, but Twitter is where I just post stuff. Like I get phone calls from recruits, their parents. I post tidbits that I can't post everything. It'll go to Twitter, or X, whatever the hell it is. So it's just I can't keep up. The point is still the same. It's where you're going to find most of the information. In between now and especially about the first week of June, it is going to be really random. There's a lot of stuff coming up with the NIL and the things that I'm hearing. It is hilarious how much money some of these schools are throwing around. There'll be some drops that if you can figure out the dots between, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Go follow him right now. FB Scouts _Florida on Twitter. Almost butchered it, but I got it. We're good there. We're good there. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate your time, man. We'll definitely have to have you back on again sometime soon because, like we said, it's going to be a very busy and chaotic recruiting off season. So we'll definitely have you on again, my friend.
All right, buddy. Have a great day. Thank you much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Sean Davis, that is Mr. Brian Smith. That was a lot of great information, man. It really was. I was only planning to have Brian, like full transparency, on for about like 20 minutes to talk Deuce. And here we are, 36 minutes later, having a deeper conversation about how things fit into Notre Dame's window here, right? How things are transitioning moving forward.
It is the unknown that Notre Dame fans are caught in, right? Because of what Brian said, there is no evidence. There is absolutely nothing for Notre Dame fans to hold on to at the quarterback position. It's not. We have to be honest. Like the success in the last 5 years has been Jack Cohn. As far as like yardage, performances, like he performed in a Fiesta Bowl and lost, but he put up 500 yards, like of recent success. That's what we point to. I mean, Ian Book, of course, led Notre Dame to playoff berth, but his individual stats weren't impressive at all. They weren't anything special. So, but now, and it's tough for us because I saw somebody on the message board, that brought out a point. Like, it seems like everything that's coming out of the spring practices is like lilies and daisies and roses and everything is going to be beautiful. And Brian is like responding to it. And it's like, we're not gassing you up.
Right.
Like, things really do look different. Like this, and this is coming from limited access. We've only had access to one full practice, but from what it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see, oh my God, the wide receivers are fast. Yes. It doesn't take, we can sit there and warm ups and see, like, oh, these quarterbacks are different. Like Brian didn't even want to talk about that quarterback competition from 2 years ago. But that's how far things have come. And we understand, like, yes, all of us are waiting to see the manifestation of it. Like, we can sit here and talk about it till the cows come home. If it doesn't happen on the field, it really doesn't mean anything. And that's for every quarterback that's in that room. But we can sit here and tell you there's considerably more talent in that room than it's been in a long time. There's considerably more talent in the wide receiver room than it's been in a long time. And just enjoy the journey. We don't know how it's going to end. We don't know what the destination is going to be. But we're not trying to hype you up. We're literally just telling you, like, yo, we're seeing something that we haven't seen in a while.
Well, Sean, so I was actually, luckily my wife loves football, so she'll have these conversations with me. But I was literally talking to her yesterday, the day before, and I was saying, because think about this. Let's say, hypothetically, Notre Dame lands a commitment from, say, Brady Hart, for instance, right? Quarterback Coco in the 2026 class. In 2026, you are going to potentially have, and I'm sure not every player will be there at this point, but in theory, you could have Brady Hart, who's 6'4 plus, Deuce Knight, who's around 6'5", CJ Carr, who is 6'2.5", maybe 6'3" at that point. We'll see if he grows anymore. You're gonna have Kenny Minchie, who's around 6'2", just a hair under. You're also gonna have Steve Angeli, who's 6'2.5". I mean, literally, Sean, any of those quarterbacks would have been the tallest quarterback on the roster 2 years ago. 2 years ago. It's, I mean, look, I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know how good the offensive play calling is going to be, over the next couple of years. I think it's going to be really good under Mike Denbrock. I don't know how good quarterback development is going to be. I think it's going to be good under Gino Guidugli. But regardless, it's going to look a lot different, isn't it? I mean,
Mhm.
Sean, literally, you could take any of those quarterbacks I just mentioned and drop them back a few years ago, like even into, like 2020 with Ian Book in that group, right? Where it's like, that kid's the most talented player in the room by far. Like, it's not even close. The talent level in the quarterback room is absolutely different. And anybody that acts like it isn't is just lying to themselves, or they're just being super negative for understandable reasons, because obviously they've been tortured in the past at some points, and I get it. I get that.
So let's hypothetically
Yes.
let us say that Notre Dame lands a commitment from their 26 quarterback recruits. Let's just say May, June.
Right.
That's sometime this summer, early summer.
Mhm.
Within the span of literally 20 months,
Yep.
Notre Dame will have added Kenny Minchie, Deuce Knight, CJ Carr, and the 26 quarterback to the room.
Yep. And
Not
whether
even
that
two full calendar years.
and whether that 2026 quarterback is Brady Hart, Noah Grubbs, Ryder Lyons, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
That's wild acquisition of talent at the quarterback position. Like, wild. I mean, Sean, who's the least talented of that group? CJ Carr, maybe? I mean, like,
Doesn't even matter. I don't care who the least talented is. It goes back to, because you had stepped out for a second with your technical difficulties, and what you came back into was Brian talking about something I brought up that Mike Denbrock said, because everybody in the fan base has their favorite. Like, some are like, they want to see Kenny be elevated. They want to see Steve Angeli get his opportunity. They want Riley. We went and got Riley. He gives us the best opportunity. That's fine and dandy. Mike Denbrock stepped to the mic, was asked about the explosive offense. One of the most important thing he said, it's not Mike Denbrock's offense. This is Notre Dame's offense. We're changing the culture. This is how Notre Dame offense is going to look moving forward. And then he said, look, our offense is going to be explosive regardless of who the quarterback is. I said, thank you, coach. Thank you. Thank you. Because now you're becoming an elite program. Doesn't matter.
Yes.
Doesn't matter.
Sean, wasn't it the practice you were at where Mike Denbrock was screaming, "Get back to the huddle"? This is what we do at Notre Dame.
This is what we do at Notre Dame. We haven't seen that, ladies and gentlemen. With limited access, we're telling you, we haven't seen that. We haven't seen a Chris Mitchell. We haven't seen a Jayden Harrison. Jayden Harrison might possibly run a 4.2 at the combine. We haven't seen that in Notre Dame.
No.
We haven't seen it. We haven't seen consistently Notre Dame motioning every snap. When have we seen? Have we been begging for that the last 2 years, Ryan? On post-game shows?
Like they did some motion, but for the most part, if anything, they're just trading before the snap. Like, they're not no exotic motions really or anything. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
And limited access, we saw that within the first 30 minutes. Like, well, you got to be kidding me. The Notre Dame offense is literally coming into the new age.
Yeah.
What we can do, we can run the ball from 11 personnel consistently. What do you know?
And if they consistently put talent around these quarterbacks, Sean, it's going to be fun. Because what are the certainties in life, right? Death, taxes, and Notre Dame's going to have offensive linemen and tight ends. Those are the certainties. They're the certainties. You don't have to worry about up front for Notre Dame historically. You don't have to worry about tight end historically for Notre Dame. If they're able to get enough talented pass catchers and running back, I'm not even worried about running back moving forward, but if they're able to get talented pass catchers, wide receivers into this offense over the next couple of years with CJ, with Kenny, with Deuce, even with Steve, like, it doesn't matter. And whoever the 2026 quarterback is, you're going to be in a good place offensively, man. And that has been the crux to Notre Dame consistently in the past. They've had defenses that were good enough. They've had. What have been the faults in some of the major games, Sean? They can't score. They can't score with these teams. They can't do it. Well, they're going to have the ammunition at quarterback. They're going to have the ammunition at offensive line. They're going to have the ammunition at running back, and they're going to have the ammunition at tight ends. The next step is we got to get some of those dog pass catchers in here, man, because that is the missing element. And to your point, it's great to see it this spring. But I would also counter by saying, but we shouldn't have to go to Florida International and Marshall to get these guys. You shouldn't have to do that. You have to recruit better at the wide receiver position more consistently. You have to get more Cam Williams in the building. You got to get those types of cats, man. Because I shouldn't have like you. And I get it, Sean. You are awing over a Marshall All-American kick returner because he's fast, right?
Yes.
That's great. But Notre Dame shouldn't have to depend on going to Marshall to get a kid, right? They shouldn't have to depend that. They should be able to get that kid as a luxury, not a necessity. And that's too much right now for Notre Dame. And I hope that they are able to do that in the coming classes, right? Hopefully finish well in 2025 with a Derek Meadows or maybe another wide receiver. 2026, I know you and Malik were breaking this down because I watched the Lucky Lefty where you guys were breaking down some of the wide receivers that they offered in 2026. They need to strike gold in the coming months in 2025 and then start that early process with 2026 kids. So it's gonna be big.
Yo, it's something we talked about earlier today, man. I have no problem with the lessening of the tight end position at Notre Dame moving forward. None. I don't need another all AC, well, not all ACC. I don't need an all-American tight end. I don't care if I can see 2 wide receivers over 1,000 yards, I'll take the tight end taking a step back. I have no problem.
Yeah.
Because I know that they're going to be able to block and they're going to be dependable and they're still going to get drafted to the NFL. It doesn't make a difference.
LSU since 2019, Sean, have had 2 of the best offenses we have seen as far as scoring offenses. The 2019 team and this past year. 2019 had Thaddeus Moss, who was a good tight end. But you know what they had that was actually the part that scared people? Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Terrace Marshall. This year for LSU, their leading tight end pass catcher was Mason Taylor that had 20-something catches for 200-something yards. You know what scared them, Sean? Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. That's who scares you, okay?
Yes.
Having a great tight end is awesome. Right? It's great. Having a guy that's a short to intermediate separator in the middle of the field and can finish your contact, it's great. And you need it if you're Notre Dame because that plays in their fold. But you need to start getting some of those dudes at wide receiver to kind of open things up a little bit. That's been my biggest headache with Notre Dame in most of my fandom is that everything is so condensed all the time because they're a really good offensive line. They have really good tight ends. They've had good running backs, especially the last couple of years. But everything is just so tight because they don't have guys that scare you on the perimeter consistently. They don't have those guys. They haven't had those guys. You need to be able to lock some of those guys
and
up.
You know what's funny? Because I hear someone out there, I already know the rebuttal's coming. What about Georgia? They had Brock Bowers. Wait a minute. This is funny.
Linebacker made 4-3 at the combine. They got guys.
Where did AD Mitchell go before he transferred?
Sean, this is to your point. I looked up the 2021 Georgia wide receiver room. Okay. You want to listen to this?
Yeah.
George Pickens.
Mm-hmm.
They had A.D. Mitchell. Mm-hmm. They had Ladd McConkey. They had the Jack Saint guy that's going to get drafted, probably the other wide receiver. Mm-hmm. But then they had Jermaine Burton was on that team as well, man.
And he's probably what, second, third round?
Jermaine, if as long as he checks out from a character perspective, Jermaine Burton's probably going to go top 100. George Pickens would have he went in the second round, I think, right? Yeah, he would have been a first round pick if he didn't have some off the field stuff. And then AD Mitchell might be a first round pick this year. I mean, you have guys there, man. Let's not act like this.
But Georgia doesn't recruit wide receivers.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Just because Ladd McConkey was a walk-on originally does not mean Ladd McConkey's not a good player because he's also going to go top 50 in this draft, man. He ran 4.3 something at the combine. Let's not act like he's not an athlete, okay? Just because he's a white slot receiver, okay? Let's please not do that because my guy can run.
That was the success of Jordan Faison was magnified even more because we haven't seen anybody consistently make plays, take the top off the defense. It's like, oh, man, we got us one. And what you've been saying is that shouldn't be that way. That should be the norm. That's what Mike Denbrock is talking about. This is Notre Dame offense. This is what we do. We make big plays. Like, don't get super excited about one play. That's what we do. All game. That's what we do. over and over again. I'm excited to even hear a coach saying that. Like,
Yep.
before the manifestation. Because that's the expectation.
You have to taste success, and then you have to absorb it, right? And expect it.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what Notre Dame is trying to figure out right now, is that Georgia doesn't get anything out of their wide receivers, though. They make plays every time they throw them the football. They don't get stuff out of their wide receivers.
Go watch the game against Ohio State and tell me that fourth quarter wasn't about their receivers making big plays.
Man. Some of those takes are just so bad. Just because they are a balanced offense that doesn't just feature the wide receivers does not mean that their wide receivers are not making plays, my guys.
So how many? Remember when Brock Bowers went down and they were entering, supposedly, this is the meat of their schedule. They're going to Carson Beck. We're going to see what Carson Beck is made of without Brock Bowers. Carson Beck rattled off his 4 best games.
Without Ladd McConkey,
yes, but they didn't have receivers.
Yeah.
How did they win?
Receivers.
How was he throwing? He was throwing for 300 yards to who? Running back?
Well, they don't have receivers, but the thing is that they have wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends. There's only so many mouths to feed, right? I mean, so the volume thing, there's some context there, man. There's some context.
Man, you can't win without talent offensively, man. It's not like Georgia. Sometimes people act like Georgia's going to get a bunch of 4-6 guys. Like, we're just going to run the ball, go get 4-6 guys, and just win with defense.
And I'll just say this, Sean, and then we'll move on to our recap of the visitors this past week. But for me, I'm not worried about numbers at wide receiver as far as volume. I'm worried about in the big moments, they can make a play. That's all it is, man. Efficiency and guys that can make a play when it's called upon, right? I don't care if you are a run-heavy offense. I don't care if you're a pass-heavy offense. I don't care if you're a balanced offense. Ultimately, if you have the guys that can make plays, that is all that matters to me. That is true balance. Not having to formulate your offensive game plan around, we have a great running attack, but we don't trust our wide receivers, and we can't run 3 wide receiver sets because we don't have enough positive pass catchers. That's a hindrance in an offense. That's
crazy. And you can't get stuck on numbers either, because production and one. We don't need Chris Mitchell. I'm more impressed about you being a dog amongst other dogs than you being the dog in the small pond. We don't need Chris Mitchell to come over here and put up 75 receptions.
I don't know. I just need Chris Mitchell to make big plays when he's called upon. That's what I need Chris Mitchell to do.
Give me 45 to 50. Give me less production, but big moments. Because that's what we've been missing. We can get to the playoffs. We can win 10 games. We just can't make big plays in the big moments against good teams. That's what we're missing. So yes, Riley Leonard, I don't need 4,000 yards from you.
No, I don't.
November against Florida State, USC, show up.
Yep.
Show up.
I need a good completion rates. I need a guy that also has good air yards, and I need a guy that has a good yards per attempt. That tells me that he's making big plays, and that's what we need more out of Notre Dame. Notre Dame has had offenses that just can bleed a clock and can run the ball and can be efficient between the numbers. We need guys that can take a top off, man. It's just it's been a rarity at Notre Dame.
Have an attitude, man. That's why I love the Deuce Knight pickup. This dude is coming to Notre Dame feeling like I'm the best player on the field when I step on there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he should.
We haven't had that.
Have to.
We need that on the defensive side.
Yes,
Benjamin Morrison feels that way.
Yep.
Xavier Watts probably feels that way. That's what you need. Al Gold's a great coach. Like I said, give me talent.
Yep.
Coaching matters.
Coaching definitely matters. We're going to get into some visit recap, though, folks. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. We're getting into the recruiting talk now, a little bit more in depth. Before we do, if you guys could just hit that like button for us. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and hit that notification bell. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. Make sure that you are signed up over there. Anything that we talk about in the next segment has already been posted more than likely at boards@irishbreakdown.com with a nice little recruiting update. So make sure you go sign up there. And we'll get into some visit recaps on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour here on the Irish Breakdown podcast. All right, Sean. So this past week and Saturday were very important visits for Notre Dame, and we're going to work through a lot of guys here, folks. So again, you're not going to get any super new information unless you are not on boardsirishbreakdown.com. You should go sign up today because you would have 98% of this conversation on there already on a recruiting updates I'll be having over the next few days. I have a lot of articles that have been written that have already probably been scheduled out, but it's just going to be kind of recurring recruiting information over the next couple days. So make sure you get there as well. Again, no mailbag today, but if you have a super chat question, make sure you throw that in the chat as well. We have a couple super chats that are already waiting there. And trust me, folks, we will get to those questions before the show ends today. That is a guarantee. Sean, first big one I want to talk about was here for a 3-day visit. Okay. So it showed up on Friday. Actually, I'm sorry.
Thursday night, right?
Thursday night and didn't leave until Saturday night. That is Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Mount Tabor safety, Jayden Blair, 2025 safety, listed 6'4", 190 plus pounds. Sean, kind of the backstory here is, and we'll get into what Notre Dame was able to do with him over those few days because it was very impressive to say the least. Notre Dame already has commitments in the 2025 class from Ivan Taylor out of the state of Florida, who is an elite level safety in the class. They also have a commitment from Ethan Long, who is a very talented 4-star level athlete out of the state of Connecticut. But regardless, Sean, even though they had those two, you know who they've been pushing for months and months and months? That's Jayden Blair. Because as Sean Davis would say, the dude's different, man. He's different. It's not a surprise that every time Jayden Blair comes, they continuously utter the name Kyle Hamilton. Because there are a lot of parallels and similarities to those games. Both 6'4" guys, both incredibly athletic, can do a lot on the back end. And Sean, I know we talked about it a little bit. The recruiting update was on the message board too, after I talked to Jayden. But Notre Dame is moving the needle there, sir. They're moving the needle, talking about how they can use him in the defense. He called it an eye-opening one. Because it wasn't eye-opening because he understood what Notre Dame can bring to the table, right? He understands his relationship with Marcus Freeman. He understands his relationship with Al Golden up until this point. But it was big for twofold. One, Mike Mickens is a guy that's been developing a relationship with him because previously Jayden had a great relationship with Chris O'Leary, who's now with the Los Angeles Chargers. Mike Mickens is obviously a little bit newer in that recruitment as far as developing a deeper relationship. But he said it was eye-opening because they sat down and they showed him all the things that he can do in their system, right? From playing true single high to 2 high to rolling down to playing in the slot, playing on the second level. He's a versatile weapon, and that's how Notre Dame was able to show him this weekend that they need him in this class as a priority recruit.
We talk about this young man. The film speaks for itself. What he would mean. Look, we have said this before. Adding Jayden Blair to this class would probably be the most impressive safety group that Notre Dame has collected, which has been a position of question in recruiting for a while now. Not a question of development and whether or not you can get guys to play solidly at the position, but you're talking about getting recruitment, athletic, rangy, first, second round type NFL players to play at that position. And regardless of whether or not, remember last year, it's funny how, revisionist history will show us that there was doubt surrounding a safety in last year's recruiting class that all of a sudden is receiving a lot of buzz for his range, his body change. He's looking faster. Man, we might have a kid to play next to Xavier Watts. But he was a 3-star, right, Ryan? So a lot of folks, he was a 3-star. You remember that? And people were like, I don't know. And all of a sudden, we're starting to see some manifestation because it has to happen in practices first before we see it in the fall. This kid, I don't think that's his journey because everyone's journey is different. I think this is a kid that can be an immediate impact, but he's going to get the opportunity to grow and learn in Al Golden's defense. And what this does at the safety position, Ryan, and you can probably explain it by playing. Al Golden by nature is aggressive. But yes. Al Golden, because of certain limitations athletically, was not allowed to do certain things that he might want to do. So you heard Al Golden when he first showed up at campus, and you're going to juxtapose this. Go watch what he said this weekend, and then watch it when he first got to Notre Dame. He always talked about how smart the kids were.
Right.
He really never talked about the tangibles, the physical abilities. He always talked about, man, these kids are really smart. They're really smart. They're really grasping the defense. Yeah, because there's only so much you can really give them because of some physical things that are, thank you. So yeah, they're grasping that. But now, Al Golden, you're the one that's becoming the mad scientist, because now the athleticism is starting to show up.
Right.
And now you can really be uber aggressive. You're aggressive by nature, but now the recruiting and the guys that you have in the current roster is starting to open up a lot of different areas of your mind and say, oh man, we can do this with this kid. We can do that with this kid. Because the athleticism and range and safety is going to be greater this year. Let me say that again. It's going to be greater this year. Guess what? That means the linebackers who are more athletic, now I can fire these kids and ask them to do a little bit more. Why?
It's a great
point. And see, this is what we're getting. So this is why a kid like Jayden Blair excites us when you combine him with Ethan Long. And you combine him with, the Taylor kid. That gets me excited, though. I mean, man, I'm trying to hold it in.
You're shaking, man. You're so excited. You're shaking.
I'm trying to hold it in. Because look, the questions that were out there for a long time, Notre Dame fans, are being answered. You're seeing them answered right before your eyes. The quarterback room is being answered. The wide receiver room is being answered. Safety is being answered.
It is, yeah.
And what you pointed out, this is why I felt comfortable. Remember, we got a little bit uneasy when Coach left, Chris O'Leary left.
Yeah.
Surrounding Jayden Blair. And we were having conversations. We were like, man, Notre Dame was in a great spot. I don't know how he's going to react to this. But then we have to think about it. And this is just being fair. All the work that was done up to that point, fair. But just being fair. If I said, Ryan, you had one weekend to close the deal, would you rather have Mike Mickens closing the deal, or would you rather have Chris O'Leary closing the deal?
Yeah.
What would you say, bro?
Well, and it's no disrespect to Chris O'Leary, because obviously he did a tremendous job with Ivan Taylor, with Ethan Long, and he put him in a great position with Jayden Blair. But yeah, I mean, Mike Mickens is definitely the most proven recruiter comparative to those two guys. Like there's no. And Sean, it was funny. I was laughing when you were talking about the tangible traits that guys have. That is the most, we call them cliche players in the scouting world, because you ask them like, what kind of player is that guy? And they just go into the super cliche, like, first man in, last man to leave, coach's kid, like all that stuff. But they never actually mention like arm strength or athleticism or any actual physical trait, man. It's hilarious. They never actually mention the tangible parts of like playing the wide receiver position or playing quarterback or wide receiver or anything. It's just hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
And it's stacking. That's what they're doing.
Sean, I was down in the combine. This is a funny story. So I was at a bar and there was an agent there, right? And an agent had asked me my opinion of JJ McCarthy, right? And I said what I said, and then I countered with him because he was like, "Oh, dude, I think he's the truth. I think he's the truth." I'm like, "Okay, well, tell me, why do you think he's the truth?" And this was his response. He was a bro guy, right? Like, bro. He went like, this was his word for word, Sean. I'm like, why do you like JJ? And then he said, he's a winner, bro. I'm like, okay, well, that tells me all I need to hear about JJ McCarthy. Thank you so much, because I don't count quarterback wins as a physical trait. I don't know about you, but yes, he's a winner, bro.
And guess what?
Sure. Yes.
Pat Mahomes wasn't a winner in college.
No, I think he had a losing record at Texas Tech, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Prescott wasn't a winner in college. Like, dude, what are we talking? Give me something tangible. Give me something real I can hold on to.
Yeah. Oh, my favorite is what's the strengths of this wide receiver in NFL draft space? Oh, he's a great blocker. Oh, damn. Well, I don't want him on my team then if he's just a great blocker. Sorry, you guys. That's not my thing, man. I want guys that can catch the football personally and
It
make some
is.
players happen.
It is. Look, to go back to what you have reported and what you just said concerning Jayden Blair. We know what we needed to hear from this weekend. We knew. And I felt very comfortable with Mike Mickens being the one, whether it's a film session, whether it's conversation with mom and dad, whether it's laying out the plan, and this is how you're going to get developed, and this is how we're going to get you to the NFL. Whatever needs to be done, it was in the hands of Mike Mickens, Marty Biaggi, Marcus Freeman, Chad Bowden, and the rest of the staff. And I felt very comfortable with them being able to do that. And to hear how he responded to everything.
Yeah, it was very positive.
Hey, we know it's a two-team battle at this point. At least that's the way we feel. It's a two-program battle.
Well, yeah, and so people are going to ask, like, dumb it down. Like, what does it mean? So basically what we're saying after this visit from Jayden is I felt like, and I know we talked about this a lot, Sean, felt like it was a Notre Dame Penn State battle coming in to this visit period, right? And I would even say that coming in, I thought Notre Dame had a slight lead over Penn State, right? Like they're battling. After that, it's like Florida State's probably number 3, but there's a little bit of a tier break in my opinion. I think it was a Notre Dame Penn State battle. Coming out of the visit, I truly believe Notre Dame is the number 1 team for Jayden Blair. Like I just do, right? But there's ultimately a lot of time. He's going to be back at Penn State. He has an official already set up for Notre Dame, June 11th through the 13th. He has other official visits that he already has set up. So like, it's not a done deal for Jayden Blair. But if you're asking me, do I think that they have the inside track to finishing this one after this weekend? Did they put themselves in the driver's seat? I think they did. Now, ultimately, that could be reversed. He has a bad visit to Notre Dame and during his official. Penn State knocks it out of the park when he gets there for an unofficial and then an official. I mean, like, there's things that can happen. But ultimately, after this weekend, I think Notre Dame did such a good job that they are the team to beat in the recruitment, in my opinion, right now for Jayden Blair, which is all you can ask for this time of year. Be in the driver's seat heading down the stretch. Because if they are, because Sean, and we'll move on to other guys, and we'll be a little bit quicker with it, but this was obviously just a great conversation. Family loves Notre Dame. Does Jay Blair, his father, post about anybody but other than Notre Dame on Twitter? Like, I haven't seen it, man. Family loves Notre Dame. Jayden Blair loves Notre Dame. And I think Notre Dame is the team to beat for Jayden Blair. My pulse coming out of the visit. Let's go now to Laverne, 2025, Laverne, California, Bonita High School linebacker Noah Mikhail, who made his first visit to campus, Sean, since last offseason. So this is one that was very important, to say the least, because you have not gotten Noah Mikhail on campus in a very long time. Notre Dame needed to knock this one out of the park. Now, I would say it like this. I would phrase it this way, and you tell me what your opinion is, just kind of based upon what we've talked about, what's been posted, everything. I think Notre Dame did a great job. They did a great job with Noah Mikhail. Noah talked about Al Golden, talked about Max Bulla, talked about Coach Freeman. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of great linebacker people at Notre Dame right now, right? That can really sell it, right? So I think that they did about as well as they could with Noah Mikhail. But if you're asking me, coming out of the visit, do I think Notre Dame ends up with Noah Mikhail? The answer is no, right? No, because other schools, Oregon, Texas A&M, USC, I think they all had a lead on Notre Dame coming into the weekend. I think at best, Notre Dame was probably third in that battle coming into the weekend. Did they do well? Did they move the needle slightly? Did they move the needle up? I would say yes, but ultimately, I still think they're playing from behind. I still think they're playing from behind from Noah Mikhail. If we did crystal balls, if we did future cast, if we did all that stuff, I would not put a future cast in for Noah Mikhail. I don't think that they are a leader for Noah Mikhail, but it's still, Notre Dame did a really good job this weekend. I just don't know if it's enough. I just don't know if it's enough in the end.
Look, that's what you do, though. You go after the best. You win some, you lose some. They're consistently giving great experiences in recruiting. Dre Brown, Chad Bowden, the rest of the support staff. Ladies and gentlemen, you have one of the best recruiting support staffs in college football. flat out. What they do, the creativity, the communication, the environment they create for parents and young men, it's absolutely top notch. You go after some kids, and some kids you get, and you get that type of experience or vibe that we feel with a Jayden Blair, and then you give another kid the same type of great experience, and maybe the needle doesn't move as much. Right. Yeah. But we'll see. There's still a long way to go. Like we said, you still have some time to make a move. You still get him back for an official visit. And, you know, I'm excited. Can we give another component to this?
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're sitting here and we're telling you about what's different as the media. I've said it. Mm-hmm. Ryan hasn't had a chance to really get to a practice. Mm-hmm. Brian has said it. Vince has said it. Yep. We pointed out, there's something going on here. We're seeing some different things we haven't seen before. Guess who else is seeing these things? Guess who else is seeing the practices and coming away seeing a dominant defense? We're hearing it from 25 kids. We're hearing it from 26 kids.
Constantly.
24 kids. Like, I went to practice. The defense is crazy. Don't tell me. Mikhail is seeing this. Jayden Blair is seeing this. As much as we talk about what's being said to them from the staff, coaches, and everybody, they're getting to see the actual change, the actual elevation in talent and development with their own eyes. That's another component that we need to point out that is very important in recruiting. Can you see yourself on the field when you're watching the other players and their development? It's very important. And then with Mikhail, it's great visit. You see Drake Bowen.
Oh, yeah.
Who Brian has said on the message board, like, hey, this kid is dominating at middle linebacker.
Kingston looks pretty good, too, for what I've seen, too, man. Yeah.
There we go. So now Mikhail's looking like, two studs at middle linebacker. I think I might want to join this. This is kind of appealing.
Yeah. Sean, quick shout out here. I think Jay Blair is in the chat right now. We got Coach Jay, who said they did a heck of a job. We are so blessed as a family. I believe that is Jay Blair right there. So, Jay, thank you so much for joining the show, man. Really appreciate it. And
look,
we'll have to have him on the show if Jayden does end up picking Notre Dame. Sean.
Absolutely.
We'll have to have him on the show.
Absolutely. But ladies and gentlemen, let's not get it twisted.
Yep.
I don't know what everybody else is saying, but things are changing, man.
Yeah.
Things are changing. And all of us are sitting here waiting. See, don't run from it.
No.
Just encourage Notre Dame fans. Don't run from the fact, because I know the Georgia fans, the Alabama fans, the Ohio State fans, they have the same go-tos. It's been 30 years. You're right. Mm-hmm. You're right. Eat it. Eat it in, Notre Dame fans, because guess what? When that trophy is hoisted, it's going to taste so sweet.
Agreed.
It's going to taste really sweet. When you finally get to the mountaintop, you're going to be able to say yes. Because Michigan had the same type of drought. Mm-hmm. Similar drought.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's come. I'm telling you, man, these recruits and the recruits that came in 2 years ago and the practices they were watching.
Yep.
Totally different vibe.
Agreed.
Totally different vibe. And the vision they get to see when they're trying to see if whether or not they fit into the plans of Notre Dame moving forward. It's much more inviting right now in recruiting than it was, say, 2 years ago when Marcus Freeman and his staff were getting started.
Yeah,
man. So, I mean, we're going to go, like you said, you go after the top kids.
Yes, you do. You're not going to win them all.
You're not going to win them all. You're not going to win them all. But you do what you can do. And then, the decision is up to young men that are 17, 18 years old, man. It is what it is. This is the game.
Love this right here, Sean. Love this right here.
Yeah, we all know Double R.
Oh, yeah. My guy. Appreciate you, sir. Truly, Jay, appreciate you for stopping in the show, man. It's always fun to have recruit targets, recruits in the class, all that type of
Yeah.
stuff. Their parents in the. That's why, Sean. That's my favorite thing. I was texting with Don Schuler yesterday, man, because it's the relationships, with the parents and stuff too, man. It's always awesome. It really is fun time. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
He should be a happy father too right now.
Oh man, I mean, first and
Man.
foremost, I've had the chance to have Jayden on the show before. What a great kid! I mean,
Yeah.
quick shout out to Jay Blair and his family. Like they have raised a tremendous young man. Forget about the football player, for instance, because he's obviously an elite level football player, but great kid, honestly. Like real. So congratulations to the Blair family for everything that they've been able to accomplish so far. I know they are blessed, and I know that they are certainly enjoying the fruits of what Jayden has been able to put in from a work perspective. So, and so Sean, to circle back to Noah Mikhail again, kind of the excerpt here. Notre Dame did really well this weekend, or this past week. Excuse me. He came on Wednesday, but I just don't know if it was quite enough to push it to the highest of levels to potentially. I mean, the next step is you have to get him back for an official. He's not scheduled an official to Notre Dame, but if you schedule an official, maybe you have some late movement, but overall, I would say that you're probably playing from behind a little bit for a no.
And I think we have something that we said recently. Mm-hmm. We knew Oregon was going to be in the mix, right? Because Oregon has attitude. We can come to California and get whomever we want right now.
Yeah, that's what Max Torres that covers the Ducks. That's what he told us. I mean, they feel like they can get about everyone. USC's having a little bit of a rebirth. They just got Tagovailoa. So
you have to tip your cap. You have to tip your cap to Lincoln Riley making the necessary changes in the coaching staff and the recruiting staff. And now you see the resurgence where they're starting to beat Georgia for defensive players and flip floor, other commits. And that's something we haven't seen in the last 3 years, for USC. So now you get them on the West Coast coming back, and they were pretty much controlling those schools, right? They were feeder schools like modern day. Absolutely. Yeah. So it is, getting a kid like that from California, it's going to be a battle.
It's going to be, with the rebirth defensive coaching staff that USC's put together, and then Texas A&M is another big one on Mikhail's list, and obviously Mike Elko and what they're going to be doing down there. I think they're going to do a lot of great things. So I mean, again, you're playing from behind. You hopefully get him back for a official, and then maybe you're able to create late movement. But overall, again, Notre Dame did well with Noah Mikhail, just maybe not well enough. But regardless, Sean, and one that I was shocked about. I want to talk about this one. Shocked is probably not the right word. I was super surprised about. Back in December, Notre Dame had offered a wide receiver, 2025 Houston, Texas, Dekaney High School wide receiver, Tanook Hines, who, for people that don't know out there, 500 meter kid, 6 foot, 170 pounds. Kid can move, to say the least. Well, hasn't been a ton of momentum, Sean. He had never been to South Bend before. He had said solid things about Notre Dame in the past, but had never really talked too much about Notre Dame. Well, he made his visit this past weekend, Sean, and I had an interview with him that is already out on irishbreakdown.com. It was on the message board as well. He said something very interesting to me, and I kind of want to highlight this one. Actually, let me get the exact quote, because I thought it was a very interesting quote from the article I wrote on Tanook Hines. Let me grab that real quick. So Tanook, who again was first time ever visiting campus, literally the first, this is what he said. Okay. He had said, wait, let me make sure I'm reading the right one. Wait. Oh yeah, here it is. He said, I loved the coaches. I was nervous that I wasn't going to fit in at first, but as soon as I walked through the doors, everyone made me feel at home. The conversations were all great. Coach Marty Biaggi, Coach Mike Denbrock, and Coach Mike Brown were all awesome. I love those guys. I even got to spend some time with Coach Dylan McCullough, and I really like Coach Marcus Freeman. We have similar backgrounds. It made me feel really comfortable. Sean, what do we always talk about for players that make their first trip to Notre Dame? There are a lot of players that can't see themselves there, and then they make the trip, and then lo and behold, they can see themselves. That's what I got from Tanook Hines this past weekend. Notre Dame was an intriguing name to him before the weekend, in my opinion. He went to campus, and Notre Dame, again, the old expression, knocked this one out of the park. Yeah. I don't think there was any momentum with Tanook before this enough to get him to visit, but not enough that they were going to be a real contender in the end, they made him feel comfortable. He admitted that he was nervous, that he wasn't going to fit in. He was nervous.
Yeah.
He's a Texas kid, like Notre Dame, right? And then the last quote, Sean, and I'll read it and I'll let you respond to it here, is that, well, actually, let me do two more real quick, okay? Two more. One, he said, with Coach Denbrock's offense, I feel I can produce. He thinks I can be as productive as Will Fuller when he coached him, or even like Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas he had this past year. He then said, and I'm trying to find it. Sorry, I should have this one a little bit more ready. He had said they will definitely play a role in my final decision. After today, they are very high on my list. After today, they are very high on my list. Talk about Notre Dame playing from behind before the weekend and showing Tanook Hines, who's a highly rated kid, by the way. Go look at his offer list. It's bananas. All the Texas schools, most of the SEC, all the Pac, they got everyone that is coming after Tanook Hines. And Notre Dame not only made him feel comfortable, not only made him feel wanted, but they are now a leader for him leaving this weekend. They did that in one 24-hour period, Sean. One 24-hour period. Wild, man. Wild.
When it comes to Notre Dame, what do we say jokingly? Like Notre Dame is always in the lead with the parents, right? When it comes to parents for recruits, they come to Notre Dame, they fall in love with Notre Dame. But I think another trend, we pointed out the practices and how the talent has improved and how that is giving a better look for recruits coming in. There's something else. Like you almost have to have a hardened heart when you show up to South Bend not to be impacted by the job that the support staff consistently does and just about the overall vibe, lore, and love that the Notre Dame program gives you, that the players give you, right? The family and the brotherhood that exists there that we talk about that goes back spanning 30 plus years. The brotherhood that still exists with these young men as they go throughout life and matriculate through life. And so now you bring this situation and you're talking about these recruits that are coming in, Tanook especially, who's a big time talent. This goes back to Notre Dame now. The plan was coming in. We saw this with the 26 offers that went out, right? The 26 offers were by far the most audacious offers we've seen for any pot of gold. You talk about they went after the best of the best. In previous classes, you would see a nice collection of big time offers, but then there would be, kind of steps there. Like you would have your offers that made us say, oh, okay, let's just use the quarterback, right? We would see one or two quarterback offers. We were like, oh, okay. And then we would see other quarterback offers. We were like, all the quarterback offers in 26, what were we like, right? It doesn't matter. Flip a coin.
Take any of them. Yeah.
Throw a dart.
Like if Notre Dame would have pushed for Will Griffin, right?
Yes.
Or someone like that out of Florida, or, maybe if Troy Hune was hired, it'd be like, cool, man. Like they could play, right? Like they could play. But yeah, it is changing, Sean. I know it's not like a kind of like a broken record with that, but it's definitely changing. Like there's no doubt about it in my mind. But
and then the coaching staff, right? See, everything's coming together, right? We talk about the practices. The staff was already elite. Retaining them, retaining Chad, adding the analysts, adding to the staff, the support staff, the investment. Could you attribute that to Pete Bavacqua? Go ahead. He's a new athletic director. But Jack Swarbrick, when it comes to the facilities that are coming, his legacy is still giving forth fruit, still to this day, and he's going to continue to do that.
Because that stuff takes a while. It takes a while to make happen. Yep.
He did the fundraising for those things that you're going to see in the future. So it has been a collective, and we've talked about seeing the changes in the administration and the support. Don't think that that's showing up in recruiting as well. That's showing up in recruiting as well. All of this is a collective of everyone pulling in the same direction, right? And advancing things. And that's why the hope continues to build surrounding this program. And so you get a kid like Tanook that walks into that. He feels that. He's nervous, but he walks into that. And he feels the momentum. Like my dad told me, decisions are momentum for your life, son. Everybody wants to get to make the big decision, but they're not willing to be consistent at the small decision because that's what leads to the big decision. Notre Dame has, behind the scenes over the last 2 years, has made some very smart, small decisions that are leading to big decisions and are leading to the changes of the vibe and the narrative surrounding Notre Dame. And that young man walked in nervous as heck. And what he got to experience is some of the same things we're hearing from the 26 kids when they come on their unofficials. Man, as soon as I walked through the door, I could just feel the love from the staff, from the players. It was like I could just feel the love. I can see myself being here. That's what Notre Dame is becoming for young men when they show up on campus, man. You feel the love, you feel the joy, you feel the hope, you feel the promise, you feel the reality of saying national championship. It's not just something that you say. Now you can feel it. And kids want to be a part of that. Yep. Kids are starting to feel like, I want to be part of that. First championship, I want to be on that roster. And it's a great time, man. And that is what Tanook is talking about. Like, yo, when I have a guy that's putting 2 first-round wide receivers in the draft right now, tell me that I remind him of a Notre Dame great that he coached.
Sean, I was going to add to it, not only 2 first-round wide receivers, 2 kids that might go top 15. Like, that's like legitimate top 20 first half of round 1 wide receivers. That matters to recruits, man. You don't think, Sean, you don't think it mattered. And I don't think that Deuce Knight ever wavered from Notre Dame when the transition from Jared Parker happened. But you don't think it mattered that the offensive coordinator they're bringing in just had the highest scoring offense in college football and also just had Jayden Daniels, who has a lot of similarities to Deuce Knight. You don't think that mattered to him? Absolutely it mattered to him. And it should. It should. You see yourself out there. Circling back to Jayden Blair. He mentioned Kyle Hamilton again for like the 6th time of an interview that I've done with him, right? He mentions Kyle Hamilton because he sees himself in him. You can see yourself out there. Like Xavier Watts is an All-American, but Xavier Watts and Jayden Blair are very different physical players, right? Like they look very different. You know who Jayden Blair looks like a little bit physically though? Kyle Hamilton. He looks a little bit like him. Just from a length perspective, from a body type perspective, they look like each other. So when you can visualize yourself somewhere, that's big time. And Tanook is a legit 10.5, 10.4, 100-meter kid.
That's
so
crazy.
seeing what Mike Denbrock did with Will Fuller, you don't think he can see himself there as a 6 foot, 170-pound receiver that has legit speed? He can see himself, right? So I don't know if Tanook's going to end up with Notre Dame. I don't know if Notre Dame's going to push for him as extensively as a couple other guys down the stretch. But you know what they did this weekend? They put himself in a very good position to do so if they choose. That's the point of these visits sometimes. So Tanook Hines, get to know the name, guys. I did not think that Notre Dame was a realistic option for him before this visit. And honestly, when I heard that he had scheduled a visit, I wasn't overly high of like that something good was going to come out of it. I thought it was just going to be like one of those of like, wow, he visited. That's awesome. Cool. And then you never hear from it again. There might be some stay power there, man. There might be some stay power. So Tanook Hines, let's move on this past Wednesday, Sean. 2026 Cocoa, Florida quarterback Brady Hart visited, and we've talked ad nauseum about this one, so we're not going to go super in depth. We had an interview that we ran right before the visit. We had caught up with him a couple weeks ago. Sean, I'll just leave it simply as this, right? Simply as this. Spent a day at Notre Dame, was his first time visiting Notre Dame. We don't have to go super in depth on it, but I believe that Notre Dame is the clear favorite to land Brady Hart. And if Brady Hart decides to commit anytime soon, I think it would be to Notre Dame. I think that they put themselves in the position to close on one of the more talented quarterbacks in the 2026 class.
Man, that was one of the funnest interviews we've done.
Great kid, right, man?
Like,
great kid.
Man.
Absolute great kid. Yeah.
Fantastic interview. If you guys haven't seen it, go check it out. The interview we did with Brady Hart, I wanted him in the room after that interview. And I love all the 26 quarterbacks. Literally. I'll take any of them. But after talking to that young man, you just feel like, oh, he's a competitor. Like he can get it done. You get that vibe off this kid. And he's not afraid of competition. He recognizes I'm stepping into more than likely a very talented quarterback, right? Yep. And this goes back to see what impresses me. Look, man, if you want to be a big fish in a small pond, that's fine. I want the dogs that want to go play with the best.
And he's not scared of it, right?
No.
Like just talking to him, he's not scared of coming up to South Bend, Indiana, if that's what he chooses. He's not scared to play against the best, play a national schedule. Like, he's not scared of it. Like, he's not.
Yeah.
He's got a little bit of a different mindset. I think Noah Grubbs also has a similar mindset, who he trains with, who is another big guy on Notre Dame's board in 2026. But we're just talking about the Brady Hart visits. I think that Notre Dame put themselves in the absolute leader spot for the Coco quarterback moving forward.
And I expected that. After speaking with him prior to the visit, I expected the visit because I think expectations on both sides were really high. And I think both of those, I think that just kind of opened things up to have a fantastic experience for Brady.
Mhm.
You know, I think
No
he
doubt.
expected coming into the visit that the visit was going to be great and everything he
Agreed.
thought it was going to be. And like I said, the staff is so phenomenal. Like
Mhm.
they're giving great experiences. I expected the experience to be great, but when you meet that
Yeah.
with the expectation of the young man and his family,
Mhm.
then you get the vibe that you're talking about.
Yep. Then we had 2026 Matthews, North Carolina, linebacker. Sorry, out of Weddington High School in Matthews, North Carolina, 2026 linebacker Thomas Davis Jr. Sean, you sent me the picture of Thomas Davis chilling there with his son. I didn't know who it was at first, and then you're like, "Oh, it's Thomas Davis." I'm like, "That's dope, man." Every time I see a former Notre Dame, NFL player on campus at Notre Dame at a practice, rocking some Notre Dame gear, it's always a pleasant sight, man. Notre Dame, Sean, and again, we're talking about a kid that is rated on the 247 composite, Thomas Davis Jr. out of the state of North Carolina, number 59 overall player, number 3 linebacker in the 2026 class. Notre Dame has done a great job early, man. A great
Mhm.
job. And this kid has a legit offer list. Now, his dad went to the University of Georgia, Thomas Davis. Georgia has not offered yet, so we'll see what happens if they do offer and if that changes the recruitment at all. But Notre Dame has really impressed Thomas Davis Jr. early. Before he even visited Notre Dame, I had interviewed him for just a offer reaction piece and a visit preview and all that type of stuff. And he spoke so highly of Notre Dame. He really did. So can Notre Dame continue the trend of former NFL players, sons coming to the University of Notre Dame? They certainly have put themselves in a solid early standing with Thomas Davis Jr., to say the least.
Now, I'm excited, man. This kid, I say jokingly, if I could be half the man my dad was, I've had a successful life.
Mm-hmm.
If this kid can be just a percentage of the player that his dad was at Georgia and for the Panthers,
man. His dad was a
man,
freak. Yeah.
yo, and watching this kid's film, man, he has room to grow. Very talented, but I think he's going to end up being one of those kids that's going to have Notre Dame. Because look, Thomas Davis is impressed. I guarantee you he's impressed. He's impressed by Marcus Freeman. They play the same position. They speak the same language, right?
Yep.
Marcus Freeman didn't have as long of a stint in the NFL, but Marcus Freeman, within his own right, was a very charismatic, personable individual, man. Knows to talk, can talk the NFL talk. Now Al Golden definitely can talk that NFL talk. You already know that. Mike Mickens, what he's developed. Now you bring in the linebacker, right?
Mm-hmm.
From a coaching standpoint and from a recruiting standpoint, what we've seen in a short time, even when he was a GA from Max Bullock, you get more and more impressed.
Yeah.
You get more and more impressed. Just the kids they offer, even if they don't stick to it or they decide to go in a different direction, you see the guys that they're offering at linebacker, and you're saying, yeah, we get him.
We'll get
Fine,
that. Yeah. I
right?
can work with that. Yep.
And
Absolutely.
then this is because though our phone conversations are always comical, right?
Yeah.
Because we'll find out something and then we'll be like, oh, okay. But then we'll realize we still have A, B, C, and D on the board. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It always brings you back to reality, doesn't it?
It
It
reels
brings
you back in because we're like
it does.
anybody else. We fall in love with a certain kid.
100%.
We watch film and we fall in love with a certain kid. Thomas Davis is one of those kids who's like, okay.
Yeah. I will never forgive Notre Dame for not taking Caleb Brewer in the 2024 class. Never forgive them. But then you go like, all right, well, they got Gerby Lambert. Like, it's all right, man. Like, we're okay, like it's pretty dang good. But yeah. So Thomas Davis Jr., Notre Dame is in a very good early standing. Again, you're going to have to fight against some of the big boys in all of college football, but Notre Dame is clearly up to that fight. Wanted to give a couple quicker ones here, Sean. So Garrett Witherington, who is a 2026 defensive lineman out of Birmingham, Alabama, Briarwood Christian, was offered. He was on campus on Saturday. 6'5", 240 pounds. Very interesting kid. Very light offer list right now, but impressive film.
Mhm.
And he had talked about Notre Dame, that he is extremely high on Notre Dame early on because they had compared him to Riley Mills when he was at the practice. And then he said, and then I saw Riley Mills practice, and I was like, oh, okay, I can. So he was really impressed by what he saw from Riley Mills. He ended up getting the offer. Another kid that does not have a massive offer list. His ranking's a little bit lower right now, but he has the physical profile that could maybe be a little bit of a riser. So that's Garrett Witherington. I wanted to bang out two offensive linemen, and then we'll get to two linebackers. Then we'll do the visit previews for the rest of the week. Okay. So two offensive linemen, Sean. Let's start with Tyler Merrill,
Mhm.
who is quite literally, I think, the biggest recruit that was on campus this past weekend. Okay. So biggest recruit that was on campus, legitimate. Okay. So this is a verified, and we're talking about a sophomore in high school, a 2023 kid. Tyler Merrill is out of Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, Cumberland Valley, verified 6'5", 320 pounds as a sophomore, Sean. Verified height and weight. Massive young man. Could play offensive tackle. Also projects probably more favorably inside. He reminds me a whole lot of Sullivan Absher in the 2023 class, like a whole lot of Sullivan Absher. Just a imposing blocker, man, to say the least. So his first visit to campus, he's also ranked as the number 50 overall player in the 2026 class by On3. He talked glowingly about Joe Rudolph, the rest of the coaching staff. He also, strategic right here, Sean. You know who he spent a lot of time talking to when he was on campus was Peter Jones, who was another Pennsylvania offensive lineman. So Notre Dame, again, some pretty good early standing with Tyler Merrill, who's one of the more dominant blockers in the 2026 class. The other offensive lineman who I wanted to throw a note out here, Sean, Ben Nichols, who is a offensive lineman out of the state of Ohio. He's out of out of the state of Michigan, Davison, Michigan. Another kid that's listed at 6'5", 315 pounds. What are they feeding these kids? No idea what they're feeding these kids, but Florida State, Michigan State, Notre Dame. He's got Purdue as well early, Virginia Tech. So he's got a bunch of offers. Very high on Notre Dame, Ben Nichols, a guy that has already talked about coming back sometime this offseason out of the state of Michigan. So Merrill and Nichols. Notre Dame put in some work with two offensive linemen. Didn't want to spend too much time on it, Sean, because guess what? Notre Dame recruits offensive linemen really well. So they're probably going to have a good shot in the end ultimately. But a couple big boys on campus, man. Can you imagine being 6'5", 320 pounds as a sophomore in high school? It's pretty intimidating. Pretty impressive to say the least.
Can you imagine Notre Dame consistently going after that body profile?
Yeah, well,
You know, and even with the success of offensive line over the last decade, 15 years, it is a departure from what the profile was. Notre Dame usually would go and get guys that they could develop, build up, but they're going to get big bodies. And that has been a change. And they're not just doing it on the interior, they're doing it at the tackle position. And you and I talked about, you know, they're almost playing like alternate, like this year tackles, next year guards, center, this year tackle. It seems like that's the way they're building the offensive line. They're attacking it from an interior, exterior mindset. And both of these young men, I see a lot of versatility. I see a lot of promise. I really do. But this is the year to go after the tackles versus, 25, so another thing to point out, when you said he was talking to Peter Jones, that because I don't want to elevate them above the collaborative effort that exists at Notre Dame. But if there is one community from a recruiting standpoint that I would say is tried and true, it is that offensive line room. Like the way they move as a unit.
Yeah. They're also a different breed, Sean. They
are. They are.
I coach football and track and field, right? I was not a long distance coach, but I compare offensive line group to a long distance long distance team. They
Mm-hmm.
spend so much time together, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
whole lot more about cohesiveness and being, in sync and all that type of stuff, that they just have this very unique relationship, right? Like they have
Yeah.
their inside jokes. They kind of herd together. They kind of just do their thing because they just spend so much time together. Like that is, I think, a very good observation that offensive line rooms just a little bit different than most positions
Yeah.
on the football team, man. Like they are just a very unique bunch, to say the
Yeah.
least.
And it's very, I mean, we go back to not only the success, but the success has spanned multiple coaches. So you just can't attribute it to Joe Rudolph. You just can't attribute it to Harry Heastan. That success has spanned multiple coaches at that position, right? And so Joe Rudolph was tasked with, let's look at the Gerby Lambert situation, who was fully locked into Harry Heastan.
Yep.
Harry Heastan leaves, and now Joe Rudolph has to re-recruit one of the top tackles in the 24 class. And what happens? The impact of showing up, getting to Notre Dame, seeing that O-line room, seeing how they're coached, seeing how they relate to one another, seeing a Joe Alt, talking to a Joe Alt, sitting in the film session. Dude, that is tried and true at Notre Dame at that offensive line position. It just is.
Yeah.
And they might not win. You know what? I don't. It's very rare that Notre Dame loses an offensive line in recruiting. I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, doesn't happen very often. Yeah. Outside
Very rare.
I mean, the last couple of cycles outside of Monroe Freeling, I really wouldn't say that they lost
That's
anyone.
Knowing what we know,
Self-inflicted. Self-inflicted a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, I wouldn't say self-inflicted. It was outwardly inflicted, I guess, is a better term for that one. Yeah. Yeah. So even that one, I guess, yeah, to your point, it wasn't really Notre Dame's fault per se in that way.
They'll lose recruits in recruiting battles to other programs. Offensive line, Notre Dame usually gets whoever. They're almost like the feds. Like, dude, if they take you to court, it's pretty much a done deal. If Notre Dame, if they lock in on a kid in the offensive line, once they show up, they get around the other offensive linemen, and then you have Nick Martin come in. You have Quentin Nelson show up for your visit. It's tough it's tough to beat.
It is. Two linebackers I want to hit on real quick, Sean, and then we'll get into the preview for this week. One is Las Vegas, Nevada, Desert Pines linebacker Kenneth Goodwin, 6'1", 6'2", depending where you look, 205 pounds. This might be one of my favorite players I've watched in the 2026 class so far. This kid is explosive. He is lightning in a bottle as a linebacker. Notre Dame has done a great job with him. Spoke highly of the staff and everyone coming out. He spoke highly of the staff going into the visit. I think Notre Dame is definitely one of the early players for Kenneth Goodwin, and that is saying a lot for the fact that Kenneth Goodwin already has offers from Georgia, Ohio State, Arkansas, Boston College, Ole Miss, Syracuse, Texas A&M, UCLA, Washington. He's got a very healthy offer this very early on in this process, despite him not having any stars by 247, but that's another conversation for another day, whatever. Comparison I want to throw out there, Sean, because everything's good there, right? Trending in a good direction. Max Bola compared him to Jaylen Sneed during practice, which I thought was kind of an interesting one, man, because Jaylen Sneed is a very unique linebacker. Very unique body type, very unique skill set, kind of more of an explosive guy than a true downhill type player, more of a rover body that can play will at times. Versatility appears to be the name of the game for Mr. Kenneth Goodwin.
The last two kids we're going to talk about are two of my favorite, man. And two kids that are slept on. I'm talking about that are flat out slept on, in my opinion, in this class. So to get them on campus and to hear, didn't doubt that the experience would be a great experience.
Yep.
You talk about both of these kids. Once again, man, I'm just ecstatic about the offers that are going out. It seems like the evaluation has improved. Maybe that's a direct result of having more analysts, having more staff, to take a little bit off the plates of the coaches. And then the influence of getting a Max Bullock in, right? The influence of Max Bullock being able to tell, yo, watch him. Watch him doing practice. You remind me of Jaylen Sneed, right? And this is his year to shine, right? So once again, it goes back to what I said. Now the practices are becoming beneficial in recruiting, as well as just, seeing the campus, talking to Marcus Freeman, talking to the position coach, sitting in on film sessions. Now you can visibly see it.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it. Like, yo, that's me in this defense, being successful in this defense.
I think it matters to be able to see yourself, man. I really do. I mean, you need to be able to visualize how you would be used, the type of player you can be, the role in the defense. And that brings up the last guy, Sean, who I know we had a little bit of a conversation through text about this young man. So Ventura, California, 2026 linebacker, Tristan Phillips, listed between 6'3", 6'4", about 210 pounds. Very interesting football player, because his offer list would not blow you away right now. He's got Notre Dame, Arizona, Arizona State, Washington just offered recently. Not an imposing offer list compared to some. I mean, especially compared to Kenneth Goodwin, who I just talked about with like Georgia and Ohio State early on as well. But this kid, Sean, I like this kid a lot. I watched this film. He's 6'4", 6'3", 210 pounds, playing out in space a ton. Notre Dame is recruiting him as, you remember that Dominic Hulak position that we talked about, the money backer, right? He mentioned it. They could see me as an off ball. They could see me as an on ball viper type, a guy that can rush off the edge. This is kind of that hybrid linebacker position we keep talking about with Dominic Hulak. Tristan Phillips could be a guy in 2026 to know that I don't care about his offer list. I don't care about the stars. I saw this kid's film, and he could definitely play at the University of Notre Dame, and he could be a versatile weapon, chess piece on the second level for a team.
One of my favorite recruits, man, of recent watching when it comes to their film. Just flat out. Like you said, we had a conversation. It's like, yo, I really like this kid. Like, not a lot of big time offers yet, but and then the days after our conversation, here comes Washington, right? We're like, okay, there's a big dog that's stepping up. It's one of those things, man, where the numbers, right?
Yeah.
You love a kid, he's one that you prefer, and you're like, oh man, I would love if Notre Dame got this kid in the class. But then you start looking at the numbers and you're like, yo, I like this kid too.
Right.
I like this kid too. And it's like, you just have to see how things play out. And they have a vision, but then we have to see what the vibes are, right? Because now the coaching staff, they bring these kids in, and now they have to go and have a conversation about how do you guys think the visit went for all of these guys?
Right.
Right. And now we have to make a decision how we prioritize these guys, right? It's almost like a draft board in a sense. How are we going to prioritize these guys? We've had conversations, we've met their families, we've met them. Have things changed? Do we love them more than this guy? Right. This is that period now that we're going to enter into that's going to lead to like official visits and things happening. And some kids will commit before the season, some won't. But this is where, you start to collect that data and we start to see how the board plays out. I'm not mad if Goodwin and Phillips ends up in the class.
Absolutely
at all.
not.
At all.
Not. Yep.
Agreed. At all. And that tends to be the trend that we're seeing. That wasn't the trend 2 years ago in these position rooms, but that seems to be the trend in every position room. Like, you know what? Pretty much like all of these kids, and if we end up with these kids that some people might perceive based upon rankings on platforms, or either they just don't see something on film, Notre Dame is doing a really, man. Have you, in your opinion, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but just for the sake of the linebacker room, has the evaluation changed since Max Bullock showed up as a GA, in your opinion?
hard to say that, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like I need a
Not
little bit
enough
more
time.
data.
Yeah,
I need to see how the 2025 class finishes. I just need to hear like a little bit more early buzz in 2026.
Mhm,
I would say for me, versatility seems to be a thing that is much more kind of on the top of the list for
mhm,
just kind of early evaluation. Cause I think of like 23 class, right, Sean? Like 23 class before Bulla got here. 23, you got Drake Bowen, who's true inside guy, right? Preston Zinter is a true inside guy. You had a little less versatility, I guess. Like you knew what positions those guys were playing. 2024, you again, I think you had a pretty easy understanding, right? Like Kingston's going to be the Mike, Bodie's going
mhm,
to be a Mike Will, and Teddy
mhm,
Breezak's going to be a Rover. Like not as much like variance. 2025 so far, it's been a little bit different, right? Because it's like Josiah Kia, Rover Will, he can kind of move over a little bit, right? Anthony Saka, Rover Will type, like he can move all over the place a little bit. So I think versatility might be something that's maybe a little bit more valued by Max Muller as far as like being able to play multiple positions. But that also might just be a evolution thing under Al Golden as far as like that's where the game's going. So we need to make sure that
mhm,
we're not falling to the wayside and being behind the curve instead of in front of the curve, if that makes sense. So
mhm,
it's a really good point though you're making. Like I would love to revisit that when we know what does the 2025 class fully look like? What is the early buzz in 2026? Because I think then we can make that distinction between what Max Bulla liked compared to what James Laurinaitis liked, or vice versa, right?
mhm.
In the future. So that's a really interesting conversation that we'll definitely explore here moving forward. Sean, we're going to transition here in a second, folks. So that is a bunch of the recent visitors this past week. If you missed any part of that, please go back and listen. We are going to preview what the rest of the week now looks like in the recruiting world because, guys and girls, April 13th, which is next Saturday, is a very important weekend for Notre Dame in recruiting, which will lead in to maybe the most important weekend of the year, the Blue Gold game the week after that, right? So the next 2 weekends are going to be huge. So we're going to preview everything for the rest of the week leading up until Saturday. Before we do, hit that like button for us. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Hit that notification bell. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Apple, Spotify, or anything else out there, make sure you leave a 5-star review. Go to boardsirishbreakdown.com where you'll have all this information readily available to you all. And we'll talk to you on the next segment here on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Shawnee, we're going to be busy this week, man. We're going to be super busy. So I want to work through a few of these players that you're going to be hearing about over the next few days, okay? Next few days, including this
Mhm.
Saturday, which is April 13th, which is right now, Notre Dame is expecting upwards of, let me just make sure I have this number right, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. There will be 20 plus players on campus, recruits on Saturday. There will be over 20. So it's going to be a busy week. It's going to be very busy. Let's start with a player that we got verification a couple of days ago that will be visiting campus, Sean. Okay.
Mhm.
Young man whose name has been on the board for Notre Dame for a long time, but we haven't talked about a ton because, very honestly, he doesn't really talk to media. Like he just really doesn't. Okay. So this is San Juan Capistrano, California, J. Sarah Catholic linebacker, 2025 class. This is Madden Faraou, okay, who is 6'3", 220 plus pounds. Sean, one of the top linebackers in the 2025 class, excuse me. He will be heading to campus. And I believe he was on campus once before. So it'll be his second visit to campus, but it has not been this season. So it was prior off season. Okay. He will be on campus on Saturday. And Sean, we were given some insights that right now, of the linebacker board that we know that Notre Dame is going to be pushing for, sources around Notre Dame seem to think that they are in the best spot of anyone with Madden Faraou, a guy that has an impressive offer list. He announced finalists pretty recently that included Ohio State and USC. It sounds very familiar to a former California linebacker, the 2024 class that Notre Dame was very high on, that they ended up
Mhm.
landing in Kingston Viliamoasa. But Madden Faraou, Sean, Notre Dame has a chance to impress in an unofficial visit form and then hopefully getting back for an official visit. This is just simply one, guys. We don't have enough information on as far as like if I made a prediction today, I don't know who necessarily I would put a future cast in for or a crystal ball. Notre Dame apparently believes, or at least the sources that we have there, that they're in a good spot with Madden Faraou. I have my doubts, but I also need to know a little bit more, right? Like this is just a young man that doesn't talk to media much. But I will say this, Sean, some of the parallels to Kingston this past year. Kingston was very family oriented, same thing as Madden, very spiritual, same thing as Madden, very religious, same thing as Madden. Those things typically, those types of recruits and players find a lot of appeal to Notre Dame for obvious reasons. High academic kid, very religious, sees Kingston, right? And apparently Kingston and Madden Faraou have a relationship, by the way, which I think might help their cause. I would be shocked. Can I say this? Would be shocked if Madden Faraou is not around Kingston Villiamo a lot on Saturday when he visits. That would be a disservice. I'm sure Notre Dame's going to make that happen. There's no doubt about it. But this is going to be a big one for Notre Dame, man, because a kid that we don't talk about a ton, and they have a chance to, I think, move the needle a little bit with Madden Faraou, J. Sarah Catholic this weekend.
Yeah, wide-ranging purposes coming up this weekend for recruiting with Notre Dame. So the staff is going to have to be multitasking all weekend. So because you're going to have some kids like Morgan Faraou who you've been in on, but you have to have that moment or that visit that kind of moves the needle, that gets you to the top of the recruitment. And like you said, we're not really sure because of the lack of communication from his end where things stand. Right? Some people feel good about it.
Yep.
Well, that's
Sean,
good to hear.
Sean, before you finish that point, can I just add some context here, okay? I've had an interview, at least one interview in the past with Madden. It was about months ago at this point, months and months and months ago. I was talking to another person. I'm obviously not going to say the name at a different on the Notre Dame beat, but at a different organization, okay? That was like, I've never been able to get in touch with Madden. Like, never been like this kid just doesn't talk to media a ton. Yeah. And I respect it. But obviously that makes my job very hard. That makes our job very hard as reporters. But he just doesn't talk to media much, which is why we're kind of saying, like, hey, some people think that they're in a good spot with Madden Faraou. I have my doubts, but also I need more information on this young man, right? Like I need a little bit more, but we'll see how things trend this weekend, obviously.
Hey, it should be a great weekend. I look forward to seeing what Notre Dame can do with the young man.
Yeah.
Like you said, Josiah Kia, you're getting him in the class, the versatility that Max Bullock is looking for. This is a kid that you can probably play all three positions. I mean,
the kid's a freak, man. He's a freak. He's a freaky athlete, no doubt. He's definitely a Will Mike. There's no doubt. I mean, can he play on space a little bit? Sure. I mean, the kid's a freak. He is cut from a similar cloth. He might even be slightly more athletic, maybe not as quite a good diagnostic skills, but he's similar to Kingston. Like he's got some Kingston in him. There's no doubt. He's got some.
Yeah. And so, like you said, you add him to Anthony Sackett's Josiah Kia, you would venture to say that's a successful recruiting cycle.
It's a very athletic linebacker group.
Yes,
that's what you end up with.
Absolutely. Not mad at it. But this could be that floor establishing visit where you establish the full floor, and now moving forward, we can build on that and
100%.
Start building to getting a commitment from this young man.
Yep. And clearly, Madden likes Notre Dame enough to include him in his top 4, which is very telling.
Yeah.
Now, where Notre Dame lands in that top 4 when everything's said and done still remains to be seen, which is why this is such an important visit this weekend. Sean, I want to briefly mention this one, and we're not going to talk much about it because it's still being worked out. So there is some thoughts, and it's a possibility that 2025 Roswell, Georgia Fellowship Christian offensive lineman Josh Petty could make a visit to Notre Dame this weekend. But I would like to tell you all that is not a verified thing yet. We'll still see if those plans happen. They're tentative at this point, so we'll see if Josh Petty makes the visit. Even if he does, I think that Notre Dame is still going to have a tough hill to climb to get in with Josh Petty, to be honest with you. But he is tentative plans to potentially visit Notre Dame. So we will talk more about that when things have been 100% finalized, but it is obviously at least in the thought process, in the works potentially. So Josh Petty, offensive tackle, 2025 class. We'll see if they're able to get him on campus. Next guy, Sean, we'll actually have a visit preview already well, it's not published yet, but it is finalized, so it'll be out sometime in the next couple of days. On Saturday, Notre Dame will be getting the first visit from 2025 Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Carl Albert's cornerback, Tristan Haynes, 6'2", 175 pounds. Sean, I love reading this kid's stat line real quick, okay? So one of the top cornerbacks in the 2025 class, excuse me. He has one of the most impressive box scores ever, though. As a junior, he, in 14 games, had 51 total tackles, 3 interceptions, and 7 pass breakups. Also had 4 tackles for loss and 3 forced fumbles. And by the way, Sean, some people are recruiting him as a wide receiver. He had over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns, only 45 receptions as a junior, over 22 yards per reception. Also was their kick and punt returner for Carl Albert this past season. So not hyperbolic to say, Tristan Haynes is one of the best two-way athletes in the 2025 class. There's been some quiet chatter about Notre Dame, who made his top 6. So they're a top 6 school for him right now. First visit, though, to campus. So this one is huge because whether or not Notre Dame impresses or doesn't impress, it could potentially make this or doom this recruitment ultimately. Because as of today, where Notre Dame is with cornerback recruiting, we know Dallas Golden, we know Mark Zachary. Those are the 2 top targets on the board. After that, though, there is some intrigue to potentially adding another. Jameer Joseph is a corner out of New Jersey that we've talked about a ton, who's also going to be visiting this offseason. But Tristan Haynes is an interesting guy to watch because he speaks highly of Notre Dame, top 6 school for him, and he's never visited, right? So that tells me if he has a big visit, things could escalate here if Notre Dame chooses to push for a guy like Tristan Haynes. Very talented two-way star. So can Notre Dame push the needle with him, Sean? We will know after this weekend if he is a viable option potentially in the 2025 class for Notre Dame.
And I'm willing to bet that Mike Mickens and the rest of the staff can do enough to become a serious contender. Absolutely. I'm willing to bet that they can do enough on the visit to become a serious contender. One of my guys is next.
Yeah. Well, I was going to add one note real quick, Sean, because you led me into something perfect that I should have led this segment off with. Speaking of Mike Mickens, big visitor that is committed in the 2025 class, I just want to mention briefly, Ivan Taylor, 2025 safety, who we talked about a lot when Chris O'Leary left. Ivan Taylor and his parents literally came on this podcast, Ike and Danielle Taylor, and talked about how special the relationship was between Chris O'Leary and Ivan Taylor. Spoke in depth about that, went super in depth. This will be a big opportunity for Notre Dame to just quiet all the noise, man, to just quiet it, okay? Ivan has told us, and had some other sources here, that he is solid to the University of Notre Dame. Like, there is no fracture in his relationship there. He was disappointed when Chris O'Leary left, but by all accounts, he's developed a really good relationship with Mike Mickens. And I just hope after he has a very good visit this weekend that we can just put any chatter about like, oh, is Ivan 100% committed? I hope we can put that to rest here, Sean, because he's going to get back to campus. So just quick note there. Big to get Ivan Taylor back on campus to quiet any of the noise that might be out there, because I don't think there's anything to worry about with Ivan Taylor and any possible change of heart or anything like that in the 2025 class. Big time player. You're one of your favorites. And I knew exactly, I wasn't even looking at the list of guys that we're working through, and I knew exactly who you were talking about before I even looked down at the list. So, Sean, let's go in on this one, man. This is a very interesting one. 2025, Frankfort, Kentucky, Western Hills, defensive lineman, Javon Campbell, 6'5", 265 pounds. For people that don't know, as a junior, he's already set the school's all-time leading scoring record in basketball, most points scored in school history as only a junior in high school. Also a big-time football player, 14 and a half sacks last year as a junior in only his first year of playing high school football. So this is a very gifted and talented athlete. Notre Dame offered him pretty early on in this process a few months ago, but since then, Sean, Georgia's come in, Ohio State's come in, Alabama's come in. The offers have been, Auburn has come in, Florida, Louisville, Miami. I don't know where things will stand with Javon Campbell. This visit will tell us a lot, obviously, even if Notre Dame's going to push for him or not. But Notre Dame needs to have a big visit if they want Javon Campbell in the end, because some big boys that came to play for the talented defensive lineman out of the state of Kentucky.
Look, one of my favorite recruits. It's going to be fantastic to get him on campus. Once again, I'm pretty sure the experience is going to be really good. But now, this is the nuance of it, bro. Who is he going to be watching? Who can he visualize, right? Because we don't necessarily have the NFL draft equity as far as kids that can look. There is no Kyle Hamilton for Jayden Blair to look at and say, man, So that's something we're still building and something we're still developing, and eventually have full belief that it'll get there. But when he comes in, you do believe he can look at a Howard Cross. We just had someone talk about, man, I saw Riley Mills, and it's like, yo, that's what's up.
Who's that guy? Yeah, who's that guy? Exactly. Yeah.
And Howard Cross, I think comfortably, he's a 3 technique, but something in the 25-26. I will say this: the defensive line offers seem to be going to guys, whether it's end or interior, guys that can play behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
Guys that consistently play length.
A lot of length, too.
Disruptors, tackles for loss, sacks, things of that nature. I think he projects to a 3, probably a 3 technique.
I would agree.
Yep. Yeah, probably a 3 technique at Notre Dame. So just super excited to get campus and to get feedback from him and what his thoughts are about Notre Dame, especially with the big time offers he has from other schools.
Yep. And I wouldn't say Notre Dame slow played him, Sean, but I do think there was a want for Notre Dame to get him on campus to just kind of, eyeball him and all that type of stuff. So again, I'm curious to see if Notre Dame decides to push. And if they decide to push, how big of an offer, how big of an impact can they have this weekend? I think it's going to be very, very important because he will be here on Saturday as well. Another big one. And we're not talking about James Simon in this, Sean, who's at a Calvary Baptist in Shreveport. Like, he's coming on Wednesday. I'm sorry. He actually is coming on Friday. He's coming on Friday. So there's a chance they might even stick around for Saturday.
That's a flex, practice. Right? That's a flex, right?
Yeah.
That's Dylan McCullough flex.
You think so? Oh, James Simon? Yeah. I mean,
come on.
It might be.
That's flexing.
Yeah.
Dylan in his recruitment right now and what he's getting at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Like, everybody know the uphill. Dylan is saying, you know what? Yeah, I'm that bold.
Yeah.
Yeah, LSU. Yeah, Alabama. Yeah, I'm that bold.
Dylan also got Richard Young to visit in the 2023 class. You remember that? So yeah, we don't expect Notre Dame to end up with James Simon in the 2025 class, but I mean, enough interest to get him to come back campus for the second time, right? I mean, I think that's mentioned.
See, everything means something. Everything means. Remember, they say what bad press is good press. Yes. From a marketing standpoint, like everything means something. Given the top guys to come, guess who's watching that? The 26 and the 27 kids.
Sure.
In Louisiana.
Who know James Simon? Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Yep.
Yes. Yep. You know who else James Simon might know? Jay Nosberry.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Like, everything means something, man. So the fact that this young man has chosen to visit says something. It says something. And he definitely has some running backs to watch at practice. You can believe that.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
I mean, you can get very excited watching the running backs in practice, can you not? I mean, I'm getting excited just watching Jeremiah Love running routes out of the slot. Like, oh, okay, all right, sure. Yeah, so we're not going to mention James Simon too much. If he has a crazy visit where they completely just shock him and make him want to come to Notre Dame, then we'll talk about him a little bit more, right? But it's going to be an outside chance there. I want to talk about this Cleveland, Ohio, Glenville 2026 defensive end linebacker, Sean Sincere Johnson, who offered by Notre Dame. Okay. Offered by Notre Dame on March 17th during the Pot of Gold. Sean, this is his second visit to campus since being offered on March 17th. He was here a couple weekends ago as well. So Notre Dame impressing Sincere Johnson very early on in this process. Hybrid, outside linebacker, defensive end. He can do some stuff, man. He can do some stuff. And getting him on campus for a second time, it's noteworthy. Very noteworthy. And he'll be on Saturday. He'll be on Saturday. Glenville kid.
And the young man comes from what is historically known as an Ohio State feeder school.
Yeah. Yeah, they are a feeder, no doubt. Yeah. So then we had Sean, this is a fun one. I like this one, sir. I like this one. So there's a young man in the 2026 class that's going to be here on Saturday as well. His name, he's out of Los Angeles, California, Loyola High School. Okay, 26 cornerback. Brandon Lockhart, Sean, who will be making a unofficial visit to Notre Dame. By the way, committed to the University of Southern California in the 2026 class. According to the 247 composite ranking, is rated as number 29 overall player in the class and number 2 cornerback in the class, Sean. I've spoken to Brandon after he got his offer from Notre Dame, and he's very open to other schools, So getting a USC commit on campus, 2026 cornerback, getting a kid out of the state of California to come on his own dime to the University of Notre Dame. Obviously, there's enough interest to at least make the visit. I'm not saying he's on commit watch. I'm not saying that he's, I'm not saying that he's, going to be, in Notre Dame's class. Like, I'm not saying that at all. But just the fact that they have enough interest to come out to South Bend, Indiana from California as a USC commit, I think that speaks volumes. I would say it speaks volumes. I would. Yeah.
Absolutely. This kid, I'm going to be honest. This kid I have not locked in on quite yet from a film evaluation standpoint.
Yep.
But as someone said in the chat, if you had said, Loyola 10 years ago in LA, it probably would have hit different because I don't think the program is as dominant as it was at one point in time. But anytime you talk about defensive back play from schools like Loyola, Servite, Mission Hills, Mater Dei, you're getting a pretty good athlete. You're talking about a pretty good athlete. I expect nothing less, and we'll see how the weekend goes, man. We'll see how the weekend goes. The fact, like you said, it does mean something to get a USC commit to come and take the trek all the way to South Bend.
And a highly ranked kid too, Sean. So like you said with James Simon, people know who Brandon Lockhart is. They know who that guy is. They're like, oh, wow. He's going on. His family's putting out their own dime to go to South Bend, Indiana, despite him being committed to the University of Southern California. So, yeah, I think that matters a lot. One of my favorite players in the class, speaking of favorites, Charlotte, North Carolina, Myers Park edge, Rodney Dunham, listed 6'5", 210 plus pounds, Sean. This young man is one of the most intriguing players in the class because he's twitched up. He's long. He's also a big-time baseball player for Myers Park as well. He will be making the trip to campus, and I'm very intrigued by this young man. Early on, it appears that he'd be one of the priorities in the class for Notre Dame, at least the guy that is on the short list of priorities. I like Rodney Dunham a lot. He fits Notre Dame. Just talking to him, I'm very intrigued to see because he likes Notre Dame early. I'm very intrigued to see how much he likes Notre Dame coming after this visit. Rodney Dunham, player to watch.
I think this visit is going to be favorable. I really do.
And he'll be here on Saturday, by the way. I keep forgetting to mention that, but he will be there on Saturday. Yes.
I think this is going to be a favorable visit for this young man. Love the film. Love the ceiling for this young man. Like he, for me, is a high ceiling kid at the position.
Yes. Yeah, agreed.
And so these are the type of athletes, difference-making athletes that you have to make a really good impression on, right? Because coming down the line, more than likely, if you can get him to lock in early, which might be a rare opportunity, but I expect more offers to come.
Yes. Oh yeah,
I do.
And they're starting to come.
They're starting to slowly come.
Starting to get more. Yeah, they're starting to trend in a little bit. Yeah. Jason asked if he wants to play both in college. Last time when I talked to Rodney after his offer, he had mentioned that he is open to it, but it's not necessarily a end all be all, I guess. So we'll see. Yeah. Notre Dame's obviously had some success with multi-sport athletes pretty recently, so I think that would be a sell. And the baseball program I know is
not doing too good this year.
Yeah, it's going through a little bit of a transition.
And you know what? It's stunning too because for the conference schedule, they were played really well, and then they got into conference play, and all of a sudden, like I was watching them play Clemson this weekend. They played some close games, but it was just like you go from this home run hitting team, exciting pitching defense, and like you said, transition now. So
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the last guy I want to talk about, Sean, we talked about guys that give you kind of a blast from the past. Jeremy JJ Finch from
Yeah.
Indianapolis, Indiana, Warren Central. I know we had a couple people in his chat that remember his father that was also an Indiana kid. Okay. So the same high school as Damian Shanklin in the 2025 class that Notre Dame is still pursuing as a defensive end, as a Viper type. This young man's super interesting. 6'3", 240 pounds, obviously an in-state kid. So you would love to be able to close on in-state kids. His offer list is not impressive right now, but I guarantee it will explode because his production is really good. And they move him all over the line, Sean. Like Damian Shanklin, you always know where Damian Shanklin is. He's on the edge to the wide side of the field for the most part. That's where he is. This kid plays defensive end. They reduce him down, rush him from the inside.
Technique, man.
Very talented pass rusher, man. I like JJ Finch a lot, and Notre Dame obviously is going to get him not only on Saturday to campus, but if I remember correctly, give me 1 second on this one. So yes, wait. So JJ Finch will be on campus on April 8th, okay, which is wait, is that today?
That's today.
Today's April 8th. So he's on
But
campus
it might
right
have changed because they
Yeah.
remember we were supposed to be at practice today and they moved our
Yeah.
access to tomorrow.
So
we'll see.
Regardless, he is going to be on campus early this week, whether it's today or tomorrow. And then also he's coming back on Saturday, Sean. So he's got two visits lined up to Notre Dame this week and weekends, which I mean, if that doesn't show interest, I don't really know what is. Obviously, he's an Indianapolis kid, so it's not like it's a far hike for him to get to South Bend, Indiana, but regardless, gotten to campus twice in a very short amount of time. So
hey, have fun, ladies and gentlemen, if you watch this young man's film, because he is definitely going to get you excited about his talents finally ending up or possibly ended up in South Bend. Like you said, just seeing how they use him. It was one team they played. I just felt bad for the right guard. I just felt awful because he was beating him on spin moves. He's beating him to quick moves, rips it out. I was just like, yo, this is an embarrassing game for you, young man. If you have aspirations to play D1 football, you picked the wrong game. No, not great at all. Big time talent out of the state of Indiana and Warren Central.
Yeah, he's a very talented player, JJ Finch. Folks, that's a lot of the visits for this weekend. We'll have constant updates. If there's any other players you're wondering about, you can throw a question in the chat. We're going to knock out these 2 super chats, Sean. Then we're going to get out of here, my friend. So, first one from ND Milton fan. If it would come up, that would be great. I feel like my computer's going a little bit slow. Here we go. ND Milton fan with a super chat. Thank you so much, sir. Notre Dame still leading with Dallas Golden, ? Yes, we believe that they still are, Nathan. I think that teams like Florida State's are making this an interesting recruitment in the end, but I would still say I feel good about where Notre Dame is. If it ended anytime soon, I think that Notre Dame would be the team to beat for him, and I do believe that they are still leading. So it's about closing time because not much offseason left, right, from the recruiting perspective for unofficial season. We'll get into the official visits if Dallas holds out that long, and I think Notre Dame has a chance to close in the end.
Yeah.
They have a chance. Well, they have a very good chance to close in the end, I should say. But rephrase that one a little bit. All right, Sean. And the last one we had was from Alan Watson, unless anybody throws in a super chat late. Alan said, which incoming freshman could surprise us or lock down the job for the next 3 to 4 years or just make the biggest impact? So, Sean, we're talking about surprise freshmen in the 2024 class that are either on campus or will be on campus soon. Any guys that you would pick as a potential surprise as far as early impact?
Well, I have an answer, but I don't know just from a depth standpoint. I don't see that. I don't expect Kingston wouldn't be a surprise to me.
Yeah, he wouldn't be a surprise to me either. Yeah, he wouldn't be surprised at all.
Bryce wouldn't be a surprise to me. I will say this only because pre-spring practice, Michael Gilbert would have been in that category for me.
He's good, isn't he, man? He's a good player.
But after it took me half a practice. Literally, it took me half the first practice to say, okay.
Yeah, it's a guy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a guy.
Yeah. Okay. We might have gotten a little bit more than most people thought we were going to get with this kid early. So yeah, it was the same vibe I got from Rico. Remember early, I was hitting you like, yo, I think Rico's gonna play early. I know
Right.
people talk about Jaden Greathouse,
Yep.
but I think Rico's gonna have a chance to play early and be pretty decent early as a freshman. So I get
Yeah.
that vibe from Michael Gilbert.
Okay.
Defensively, maybe Brian Driscoll talks about this kid. You just feel like one of the young kids is gonna pop at defensive back. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
that's just Mike Mickens' trend, right? Like
Right. Right.
one of the
Maybe
freshmen comes in,
maybe
plays,
Leonard Moore, Carson
Leonard
Hobbs, one of
Moore,
those
Carson
guys.
Hobbs,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Because of that reason, would it really be a surprise?
I don't know if I see a surprise on defense, Sean, because like my answer would be like a freshman that makes an early impact. Like I wouldn't be shocked if Bryce Young at some point is just too good to keep off the field. Where you're like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, RJ Oben, like you're gonna play a little bit more Viper now too. Like you're gonna be a
Yeah,
little bit more interchangeable because we have to
yeah,
get Bryce on the field. Like
right,
that's kind of my guy, I guess. I don't think it's a
right.
surprise though, because Bryce Young was rated as a 5-star by one platform. So I don't think people thought that he was gonna be not a good player. You know what I mean? Like people thought he
Yeah,
was gonna be good. So
yeah.
he would be one
I,
guy, I guess.
if we're opening this up to
Yeah.
everything, and I'm just going on based upon my conversations with BD,
Mhm.
Kennedy Urlacher is impressing.
As a special teamer, potentially, you think in year
And that's why
one?
I say you open up
Yeah,
all areas.
sure.
Like if
Yeah.
you look for someone to be
Well,
a special teams,
if you
maybe
open up all areas, my answer might be Joseph Vinci, the long snapper, because he might
you're
end up
right.
being a long
You're right.
snapper. Who knows? He might end up being a long
You're
snapper.
right. You're right.
Yeah.
And that's just help with him hoping he gets his what was his finger?
Yeah, his finger was jacked
Yeah.
up. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Not a major surprise. I guess the other one, Sean, that maybe would be a slight surprise for some people, I guess, just because he needs physical development. But if Notre Dame's still banged up at tight end, like let's say Mitchell Evans doesn't come
Hmm.
back as soon as we hope, or and obviously we know the injury situation with like Kevin Bauman, for instance,
Right.
right? Like maybe a Jack Larson has a role as a freshman in certain packages, certain
Yeah.
situations. Like I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't think that's not like what the question's actually asking though. We're asking for like impact, like a guy that's going to come in and just be a dude from day
Now see
one.
that's just that
Yeah,
you take that outside, that's a totally different discussion.
right,
Right. Because
right,
immediately I'm saying like the two wide receivers and Bryce Young.
yeah,
Just immediately. We're
hmm
just talking about big impact.
yeah,
But that's not a surprise.
yeah.
Those are guys that Micah
I,
Gilbert would possibly be a surprise, but
I would say, and tell me if you think I'm wrong here, but I think that I would confidently say that one freshman receiver, at least
mhm,
one, will play in
mhm,
2024. I'm not saying start, I'm not saying be a huge impact player, but I think will play in some
mhm,
capacity, right? That's one thing I would say.
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if a one running back of the freshmen was playing in some capacity. Again, not starting because we know how deep Notre Dame is at running back, but playing to some capacity. I would say Bryce Young will play. Starter, maybe not, but he'll play. Linebacker, Kingston will probably play a decent amount as a freshman. Maybe not start again, but will play. And then maybe one of the corners figures into the rotation. Like I think that's kind of where I am with this.
You know what?
Yeah.
Did you mention Keidron?
Yeah, one of the running backs I said. So
Yeah,
either
yeah.
Keidron or Aeneas in a, kind of a simplified role. Yeah,
Simplified
I can see
row.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a great question, though. It's a great
Yeah.
question,
I
Alan.
think the
Oh,
even better
yeah.
question would be the most impactful transfer. Now that
That would be a great question. Yeah. Yeah. So I think most people would go Riley Leonard just off the bat, but I mean, there's opportunities for some guys. I mean, pass rush is a little bit of a question. Like, can RJ Oben be that guy? Right. Like,
mhm,
I mean, yeah. So great question, Alan. Hopefully we have a better answer for you when the season starts, because
yep.
obviously there's still a lot of practice to be had. We're just in spring ball, working towards fall camp. Folks, we're going to end it there. I want to thank you all for so much for being here on the show today, here on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour and the Irish Breakdown podcast. Before you go, hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast, hit the notification bell when you know there's going to be a show coming for the rest of the week. Sign up at borsirishbreakdown.com, because I promise you we will have a lot of recruiting intel throughout the duration of this week, giving you guys as much impact and as much insight into the 2025 and 2026 class as these players are visiting South Bend. So thank you all so much again for joining the show today. We'll talk to you guys very soon again here on the Irish Breakdown podcast.